It is 6:30 and I will call our meeting to order. I will start by talking about some meeting logistics. Anyone who is participating remotely, we request that you change your name display to your first and last name so we know who we're talking to and who's talking to us. Anyone, when you speak, start again by stating your name and where you live. We ask you to keep any comments and questions during any part of the proceedings to under 3 minutes. And if you're speaking about a specific agenda item, keep your comments germane to the topic at hand. Anyone who wishes to speak must be recognized by the mayor. Once you're called upon, you may make a statement or ask questions. But if you have multiple questions, please make them all at one point so we can decide how to discuss them. And anyone who speaks out of turn or discusses non-germane topics will be reminded of the need to get back on track. First item is to approve the agenda. Have we all reviewed the agenda, and are there any changes? So,
yes, I would like to add an agenda item, an executive session to follow up on the executive session from last meeting.
that would be under other business.
Sure.
Okay, and then we can, if there's a motion to be made, we can take it up at that time.
Fine.
Okay. Any other proposed changes? All right, we'll consider the agenda approved with that changed. Next, we have general business and appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on any topic that is not on tonight's agenda. And as with other parts of the agenda, we ask you to keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. I'll see if there's anyone in the room who wishes to be recognized. Yes.
Or can I stand here?
Why don't you step up, because we need to get you to the microphone. So you can sit at the table if that's easier for you.
This is fine if you can hear me. My name is Penny Surgeon. I live here in Montpelier. I have a lot of things, but my big ones today are I'm having a lot of disputes with my landlord. He does not give me fair and free use of my apartment, and I pay him a lot of money. But that's just one. I have many other questions, including why there's a bathroom behind a lock at the city center over here that makes it very hard for people to get into. My husband is severely disabled, and when he has to go right this moment. And I don't have the time and energy to sit there and go through 6 or 7 different things to go into a bathroom that should be open to the public. There's a restaurant over there, there's a tattoo place over there. The food bank is on the other side. It makes it very difficult, and it seems like a non-issue to a lot of people, but it's very important that we, in the home of Bernie Sanders, in the capital of the home of Bernie Sanders, that we remember that a bathroom is a basic human right, and my ability to live inside is also a basic human right, especially when I pay thousands of dollars. I paid last year over $20,000 in rent, which is great because I only make $28,000. Too much is too much, and I ain't seen any one of you at the food bank. I've seen him. And I've seen you. Hi, how are you? It's too much. It's too much. The other day at the food bank, they were trying to shovel out. Somebody had put what are those things called? Pallets, thank you. Inside a snowbank, hoping that one of us poors would run it over and it would just mess up our car. I'm sick of being seen as lesser than because I don't make enough money. I'm sick of that guy right there not being seen as a person because he doesn't have all his bits. It's all just becoming too much. Nobody can keep doing this. Nobody. And I dare all of you to live like him for a day and try. Thank you for your time and patience. I appreciate it. I also don't think you care, but at least I said my piece. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. Yes, sir.
You want me to move that chair for you so you can sit there?
We can bring you the mic.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ralph Sargent. I'm also, excuse me, I have Asperger's. Take me a minute. Why aren't there any here? The library, every state building has no handicap entrance. I had to climb up the stairs. Literally climb up the stairs. Why? Why? Why?
The answer, yes, the answer is the flood wiped out our elevator.
I've been here almost a year. Why? Why?
We recognize that's a serious
Okay,
problem.
thank you.
Thank you. And there's someone in the back there behind you.
Hello, my name is Jacob Surgeon. Sorry. Sorry. My name is Jacob Surgeon. I came here basically to yell at you guys, but I'm not going to do that. You seem like very fine people, well-to-do, that I think the problem is, I don't want to say wild mismanagement. Again, you guys are smart. You know what you're doing. That it's a problem with priorities. That some things don't really seem to matter to certain people, especially here in Montpelier. I hesitate to say stuck up because I don't want to be mean to people. I don't do that. But what do I see here on the docket? A country club property that the sewers are literally exploding out of the thing over here in front of that everything. That a friend of mine named Dave pulled out a femur. I live on 14 Franklin Street, right across from the graveyard that flooded. There's gravestones in the river. That there's literally somebody pulled up a femur. That there's just I've never seen a city so in New England so bad at snow removal. That it's not that you guys are wild mismanaging. It's not that anybody's stealing or that there's just a whole bunch of redundancies. It's that the priorities of this town, city, and state are different than even just the people that live in it. And I ask you people to reevaluate how you look at things. I know it seems like I'm a nobody and I shouldn't be telling you these things, but it's bad and it's going to get very much worse, and oligarchy is a very bad look. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Anybody else in the room? Jake?
Thanks very much for a couple minutes. I'm Jake Brown. I'm the chair of the Cemetery Commission, and just wanted you all to know, and some of you do already, that we have a good operating agreement with the city, the MOU that we've signed a few years ago. And just wanted you to know that it exists. I'm going to send it to you again so you all have it. One of the pieces of that operating agreement relates to a shared position that we have at the cemetery that we share with DPW. And I just wanted to highlight that tonight. You know, in budget season, I think it's prudent and useful and maybe helpful to be able to use that position. And you're certainly not micromanaging the DPW, but it's available to the city for plowing purposes, et cetera. And we're proud of this MOU. We think we've done a good job with it. And I think the cities, we've been working very well together on it. But I wanted just to highlight that, particularly in budget season, that there's this shared position. Anybody wants a tour of the cemetery anytime, please let us know. We can do it in a truck in the winter. We can do it in a golf cart in the summer, or on your feet, whatever you prefer. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake. Steve?
Steve Whitaker. I would like to call attention to the rushed and non-scrutinized Good Samaritan funding that was done at the last meeting. We committed the last 45,000, I believe, of our ARPA funds, matched with state funds that they were getting by contract. They offered in the plan that was presented to the Homelessness Task Force by the chair of the Homelessness Task Force, who works for Good Sam, which is a blatant conflict of interest, and was approved by the homelessness task force, said they would open December 16th. They didn't open until December 29th. And that contract, the two combined funding sources are about $1,000 a day, 900 and something dollars a day we're paying to basically babysit the folks who have been left outside so long that they've gone feral and they can't behave with out fighting with each other and stealing each other's stuff, you know? And our police department complains of the budget impact of too many police calls for the unhoused. We've created this mess. Y'all's neglect and your predecessors' neglect has created this mess and this expense. And so now I know that we don't get what we're paying for. You know, 2 more weeks passed at $900 a day and there was no place. And so the folks have taken over the library and fighting and scrapping and getting warned and stinking up the library, you know? And bathrooms, their city center was built with a permit condition that those bathrooms remain open to the public. And Fraser has known, he's been smart enough to not certify that the records don't exist. He says, I can't find them. You go find them in our storage. And that's just absolute bullshit. They hid the freaking permit conditions, which required those bathrooms remain open to the public. And that's for the post office users, that's for state government users upstairs, et cetera. So the VC3 contract was asked about. I've given you a couple of you this. We're basically paying exorbitant fees for IT support rather than have Barry, I understand, has one person on staff at 80 grand and they support all this IT in the city. We are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars and we're in effect renting or buying laptops from this company. Basically, all the list of equipment you heard about of what they own, because we can't afford it, is a bunch of $300 and $400 laptops and some dial-in servers. So I just think the mismanagement is off the charts, and it's time to cut some staff and get to the bottom of this.
Thanks, Steve. That's your time.
I do need to respond to one part of that because there was a falsehood told. We're not aware of any permit condition for city center. That's an urban legend that Mr. Whittaker keeps referring to, but no one has ever been able to come up with it. We didn't hide the permit. Mr. Whittaker wanted copies of all a very large permit file, and we told him the cost of providing those copies. Didn't want to pay it, and we said, you can come in and look at them, and he never did. So they were made available to him. He just chose not to do so. We've gone through them. There is no permit condition in our records that indicate there was ever a requirement that there be a public bathroom in that building. I'm sure, as I've been told from folks that were around, that there was a lot of talk about, well, this would be great, there'll be a public bathroom, but it was not a permit condition. So I just want to clarify that the records were made available. We're not aware of any condition that's being violated.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody else in the room who's looking to be recognized? Okay, I see we have people online. And Dave Bellini, you're first. Just a minute, you're not muted. There we go, Dave.
Oh, thank God. Hi, everybody. Dave Bellini from the corner of Liberty and Loomis. I made my positions pretty clear and specific, I think, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? So I won't go over that again. I would like to know more about the health insurance for the employees and the drastic increase of 22%. I don't know who your insurance advisor is, and I don't know if you are your own risk pool or if you're merged with other municipalities where you share the risk, which seems to make sense. And, if not, why not? And I don't purport to be a insurance expert, but surely the city council should know the details of what the insurance coverage is, how you got there, do you ever review claims data to see what your cost drivers are? I'm asking a lot of questions up front. And I looked around online. I couldn't find anything. I would never support, ever in the future, cost shifting to employees. I'm totally against that. I don't want you to think I'm going in saying, let's just hack it away. No way. But I think you're getting hosed by Blue Cross, 22%. Is it possible? Have you thought about, hiring a TPA, putting it out to bid, seeing if you can self-insure with some stop loss? I might have mentioned that briefly. There's people in Montpelier that know a lot more than me. So I think it should be discussed at some point, if not today, sometime. And it's something, if you have insurance, it's something that needs to be managed and looked at, and you need to be reviewing what the trends are and how do you compare to the trends around Vermont and nationally. I think nationally health insurance increases are 7%. I read that somewhere. So just would like to see more information. I'd like you guys to get involved with it a lot more, and the unions to all look at it together and say, what can we do? All right, I'm done.
Thanks, Dave. Do you want to address that now or talk about it?
Quickly, and we can talk about more when it comes to the budget. So to answer a couple of questions, we are covered by Blue Cross. We have plans that are defined in our union contracts. I just don't know the plans off the top of my head. But there's a 80% city contribution for family plan and 95% contribution for individual plans. So it's not 100% covered by the city. We are in a pool by ourselves, which is why we're high risk. We do monitor our claims very closely. And we do have an employee health insurance committee that we review all that with, and we will be spending a lot of time with them this year as we prepare to negotiate for 4 union contracts to do exactly what Mr. Belidi suggested. Why are we not in a pool? For many, many years, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns ran a municipal pool of essentially all the municipal employers together, and we were a part of that, and that pool occasionally bid out their services. And at one point, that pool bid out services, and Cigna won the bid. So Blue Cross, who had been the provider, made direct entreaties to some of the better risk cities, larger cities with a good history, and offered them lower rates. So cities started jumping out of the pool, and that basically crumbled the pool because it left the bad risk cities in. And then along came the health exchange. And for employers with under 100 employees, they're all in the health exchange. So the only thing left for municipalities is those handful of cities, maybe 10, 12, 15 cities that have over 100 employees. Pooling isn't as great an option as it once was. I know the league is looking at it. We are looking at stop loss. We do have an insurance consultant through Acrisure, and we work with them closely. We did have high claims. Our claims were higher than our expenses this year, which is part of the reason why our price went up. But also, we are not the only one. We've talked to many communities in Vermont, and they're all facing double-digit and close to 20% increases. It's not just us. So it is a major crisis. We know it. It's the worst. It's the biggest hit. You figure we're talking, $400,000 in the budget, perhaps tonight, and our increase in health insurance was $500,000. We would be, without that, we would be probably at the number people want to be at. So we get it, and we are committed to doing something about it.
Thanks, Bill. Zach.
Zach Hughes, Prospect Street, Montpelier. I come to you actually, it looks like with a couple of things tonight. It was going to be one thing, but so I just want to clarify that the homelessness task force is a procedure that people who have conflicts of interest would abstain from the votes. And I believe that my co-chair alongside, she abstained, and another Good Samaritan employee on the committee abstained as well. And I want to just respond and say that the intent is to save lives. We don't babysit. And I appreciate the opinion. But I come to you to just urge you to make sure that there's a way that the transportation apparatus can be maintained between here and the hospital. I'm not sure if the My Ride is in the cut area, but something needs to be figured out. We are in the capital city of Vermont. This needs to be a priority. So if we can't do it, hopefully the state can do it. It's just a necessity. I do believe that occasionally, people do get stuck, and I have concerns about people and mobility issues. I can get into a cab, a car, but I have concerns about people in chairs. And I just think us being the capital city, we have to do our due diligence on it. It's $40,000. The other thing I just want to mention, bathrooms keeps coming up. We need to keep at that. I don't even know where to go with that. And I'm wondering, I do have one last question, and I'm going to yield back to the mayor. About the elevator, do we have a timeline on that, or is that still FEMA or whatever? I think I talked about it once a while back.
Still FEMA. We don't have a timeline.
Okay, I appreciate that, Bill. Thank you. I yield back to the mayor.
Thank you, Zach. David Huck.
Yeah, and tell me if this is not the time for it. I do have a comment on the budget.
Well, if you are able to stay until we discuss the budget, that would be appropriate.
And at what time do you expect that to be, roughly, to the best of your knowledge?
It'll probably be going on for some while.
Okay. And I guess a follow-up question then would be, is the council, it seems like there's a lot of minutia that gets brought to the council. Is that actually the council's job, or is that the city, the people who are hired by the council?
Excellent question. Do you want to address the?
And I say this as a complete novice.
Yeah.
No.
So, we have a public comment period where people can speak to us about what's on their mind, and then how that gets sorted out. Who does what. Sometimes it requires council action, sometimes it's staff action. In some cases, it's not the city's issue at all, but people are certainly welcome to say their piece and share their concerns with us.
Okay. Thank you.
Peter Kelman.
Since the issue of health insurance came up, I just want to ask a couple of questions. I seem to recall, and Bill mentioned, 100 employees. If we had fewer than 100 employees, would we have options for medical insurance, health insurance that could be less expensive, or is that? I remember that from several years ago, but maybe that's no longer the case. Because if that is the case, then assuming that the teachers, the employees of the school system, I think, are not counted in that 100. Is that correct?
That's correct.
They are counted?
No, they are not. They're their own separate thing.
Okay. All right. Have you thought about looking at, I don't know how much over 100 we are, but have you thought about looking at positions that could be done by independent contractors who are not employees, so that we could get under that number? I remember at one point we weren't much over 100 and it would have been possible, but now maybe we're up to 120 and that would be pretty tough. But consider that possibility. I know, for example, we do have an independent contractor for as the assessor. Are there other things like that we could get under the 100 mark, if that would make a big difference in our health insurance costs?
Yeah, two-part question.
Thank you.
We were at the current budget is, I think, 114 point something. So it was at one point as high as 121, but we're down to 114. So it still would be ways to go to get under 100. We have looked at the exchange rates, though, and they're not that different than ours, really, for the types of coverage that we have. And anything that was different coverage would require being negotiated. So we're not sure there'd be a giant savings. I think there was at first when the exchanges first came, but right now it's not that different than our cost.
I would also say that from my perspective, it's a big issue for employees that mischaracterize people that really are employees as independent contractors, and it's a way of screwing workers out of the protections that they ought to have, and especially with all the workers that are within our collective bargaining agreements, it would be tough and questionable to do that. Are there anyone? I don't see any other hands raised. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard at this point? All right, not seeing anybody. We'll move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
And is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Now, Water Resource Recovery Facility.
Hello, I'm Gert Monica, Director of Public Works. So a few meetings ago, I came to you and recommended that we advance the dryer only portion of the upgrade at the wastewater plant. And since then, we've opened the phase one contract for East State Street. And the costs for that project were significantly higher than we initially anticipated. When we did the just preliminary design, we're looking at a $1.2 million project. When we updated our estimate after final design was complete and had stormwater treatment added in, we're around 2.5 million as the engineer's estimate, and the bids actually came in at 3.3 million. So in light of that, we took another look at all the finances and the way the market is in construction right now. We're just seeing a lot higher prices for construction than we have historically. Part of that's the federal funding that's available. Part of it's the small contractor pool, but inflation has been high. So I'm here tonight to change my recommendation and ask council to make a motion to not advance the dryer at all from in the scope of this project. Current estimate for the dryer portion is about $10 million. And as we do final design on phase two of East State Street, there's still a lot of unknowns on that. We have not decided on the streetscape of what we want to do as far as adding bike lanes and sidewalks. So there's a potential for the cost of that portion of the East State Street to come in higher. And so I think we just need the buffer. The numbers are getting kind of too tight with all of the scope added in, and so we'd like to remove the dryer, but at the same time allow flexibility of staff to negotiate the final design contract with our consultant engineer and coordinate with state funding agencies to advance design to a point to maximize future grant opportunities. So that's not a full design likely, but I'd like the opportunity to talk to state and federal funding agencies, get a sense of how best to position the city for a future dryer project, because I do think it is an important project. It just doesn't fit within our current finances. And then the other piece is DPW has met with the business association. They have some requests to do additional PR to make sure they're not impacted too financially from the phase one project, which is right on State Street between Main and Elm. So that would also free up some funding to do extra PR, extra work to help support the businesses through the construction project. So I guess I would ask for a motion to remove the dryer from the project scope of the Water Resource Recovery Facility and allow staff to work with state and federal funding agencies to advance design to a point to maximize grant opportunities for drying and advanced thermal treatment under a future bond.
Thanks, Kurt. I don't want to be in the position of arguing against a proposal to not spend $10 million. But could you talk to us a little bit about what taking this out of the project at present would mean to the functions and operations of the plant?
Sure. So we take in a lot of outside waste from other communities, from septic tanks, and that generates a lot of solids. And all of those solids go to the landfill. And most of the weight, which we're charged by the ton, is water. And so, the idea behind a dryer only project is there is cost savings for disposal. It does not offset the entire project cost for about 40 years as the payback period. So it's a long time to sort of break even. And then without the advanced thermal treatment portion, that waste will still have PFAS in it. So it doesn't change the way we function now. Every other component within the project is absolutely necessary. So this is really the only piece we can cut out. We have odor control, UV upgrades, which the UV system is no longer supported. You can't get parts for it. And the secondary clarifiers is an old piece of equipment.
What you mean by the UV system?
Oh, sorry. Yep. So the UV system is ultraviolet disinfection. The city used to have chlorine gas a long time ago, which is really unsafe. So the UV system is about 20 years old, and the company Calgon that manufactures it no longer makes a component that's really critical for the system. It's called a ballast card that kind of controls how the lights work. So that's necessary to disinfect the effluent, the treated water, as it leaves the plant.
But so taking this out will still have us going forward with the odor control, which of course has been a big issue over the years.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Anyone else have any of these questions? Is there a motion? All right, Steve.
I remember the bond warning basically sold the dryer as long-term savings on the weight of trucking and making sure that our PFAS, for instance, our contaminated sludge was getting dried and trucked back to the landfill. And so I'm kind of wondering, are we doing a bait and switch with our voters who thought they were buying one thing and now we're taking the money and moving it over for something else without any assurance that we're not going to have to come back to them again for another bond to complete the dryer? I don't think we've fully analyzed. I know we're in a desperate situation with the, price increases of construction. And I'll very briefly mention that even the School Street construction didn't get done right. It doesn't drain to the reset storm drains, engineered potholes, brand new engineered potholes where the valve is 2.5 inches below the grade. We don't have the quality of oversight as this work is getting done. And I want to make sure that we do before we start East State, but those are a couple of questions that I think the public deserves to have an answer to before you just go and reallocate the money, because it was a bond vote that the public was sold a solids dryer.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a reallocation of the money. It's really the same projects are moving forward. The problem is we would have to go back to, I expect, for another bond in order to do all the components of the scope that was initially laid out. So we really don't have any choice but to remove this one. This is the only piece that's non-critical for the function of the plant. And if we were to advance it, we'd have to go to a bond vote for the voters anyway.
Because we're already above what the voters approved to bond. That's where we're headed.
I did the math out. There's about a 2.5% contingency right now, and a lot of that is estimated costs. So that's just not enough without having final design. That's not enough of a cushion to move forward.
Okay, thanks. Sal.
Am I recalling correctly that this was the project that doubled in cost from 16 million to 30 or 32 million?
That's correct.
And so we already cut it in half to match the funding that was approved.
Yes.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion to approve this proposal?
I move to approve what Kurt said,
Just said.
that he has written down and he'll provide.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? Carrie?
I do just want to say that this is really disappointing. And I'm not in favor of not having the dryer, but I understand that you have run the numbers and I respect your judgment on this and that you're trying to make the best of a bad situation. And I appreciate that. But I'm hopeful that at some point we'll be able to get back to it. And yeah, we'll have to bond again, but that's what we'll have to do.
Anything else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks, Kurt. Next up, Country Club Road property appraisal.
Yeah, so on December 18th, the day of our last meeting, we received the appraisal for the Country Club Road property. I think we sent it out to you all. Value was approximately 1.1 million for the section that we had been proposed to us to purchase from Blueberry Associates. And so obviously we couldn't talk about it that night, but there were some folks here talking about that project and we said we would take it up at the next meeting. But, looking at everything that's on our plate and given the timing, the urgency of that versus everything else we've got to do, I'm suggesting that we put this off until February, till after we finish the budget and can have a longer conversation about that at that time.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, thanks. Moving on to Isabel Circle. Josh.
Josh Jerome, Planning Department. You had gotten some updated information in your packet on Friday regarding a timeline of the proposed project and what that would do to the cash flows, revenue flows projections for the project against the anticipated debt service. We were able to get some new information after that was sent from our bond attorney about the surety test that would be applied. We had a conversation with our bond attorney months ago to describe this proposal, the development project. And he indicated that he thought that this would be considered as a public project and would not trigger the private activity bond test. So going back to him again to sort of just get a hard confirmation, he seemed less inclined to believe that it would pass the test. Without giving us a real sort of clear answer. He's an attorney. He kept on saying he wants to see the deal first before giving his full official opinion. But after reading the actual regulations for the security test, it doesn't seem like under the existing framework of this project that it would be tax exempt, because the security needed that our policy says that we would have to have would make it a private activity bond. So under the regulation, we would only be able to have a security equal of about $170,000. And I think the intention of the policy when it was adopted was to help incentivize the creation of housing, to help make it as affordable as possible to individuals who want to purchase or build, but also to provide security for the taxpayers. And I think those are all important pieces of this policy. And it appears that maybe the policy doesn't quite fit with this project as framed. So there are very few options. The policy does allow council to waive certain components of this. But with this being a private activity bond, we're looking at a higher interest rate. We're not looking at the 3.64% tax exempt rate. And so the higher interest rate, which I've not been able to get from the bond bank, but it would be much higher. That just means it's going to cost more, and it sort of throws into whack the revenue generation that the 28 units would generate. I would say that if you want to move forward with considering this, to be put on the ballot, and we could do that and continue to work on refining it, but you would need to waive the security piece in the policy because we wouldn't be able to get the full security.
And if I'm right, we're looking at an expenditure of up to $1.2 million.
1.2.
And the maximum security we could get for that is $175,000.
Yeah, in essence, what the security test does, it would be considered a private activity bond if the security is more than 10% of the debt service. So in this case, the debt service is a little over 1.7 million over the term. And so 10%. So it's not a lot.
So I'm no kind of financial expert, but it sounds as though what you're telling us is that there's a potential that the city would advance funds under this proposal, and if there are problems with the project or it doesn't go forward or something, that we might be left just with a loss.
Right. There's a couple of different pieces, right? There's the infrastructure, right? So we're contributing, they're contributing to the infrastructure. Now, we could require, or that's one piece. And the other piece is building the housing. In the development agreement, they would be identifying that they would commit to building 28 units over a 3-year period, as indicated in the updated sort of schedule. And so we need to be assured that they can complete their infrastructure piece, right? Which I think we can come to. I've already communicated with their banker, who I've known for quite some time. And I think, we can be comfortable with that. But then the 28 units, in essence, we're creating the infrastructure so that the lots can be have a value to them so that they can sold them to builders, and then the builders will commit to building the houses.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to make sure that our debt service is covered. And that would only happen if the homes are built. That's generating municipal taxes, water and sewer fees. And we would need to make sure that that's being done from at least 28 units with an assessed value that we've already determined to be $341,000.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to do that, there's a performance bond piece on the housing, which would be so expensive for them, it wouldn't behoove them to move forward because it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a surety bond for just the housing. And so really we're looking at other security products, but again, that test, they would only be able to provide a letter of credit or some other financial guarantee bond up to a certain amount that doesn't go over that 10% threshold. So it's possible that, yes, we could go forward and have a security of $170,000 with the belief that the infrastructure is going to get done and the houses are going to get built. And if some of them aren't built, then there's the $170,000 left there to make up for the debt service. But I think, again, the intention was that if we were going to do this and go to bond, that the taxpayers would be secured. And I think under this framework, that's not the case.
Yeah, the intention was the taxpayers would be fully secured. We're no longer in a position where we can expect that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Do we have, it seems like we have a couple of choices. One, someone could make a motion to approve it, or we could simply take no action at this point because we don't have a proposal that really works in the interests of the taxpayers. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, I think this has been a learning exercise. We've never done this before. And I think, hopefully we'll have another opportunity to use this policy, and maybe this is enough. We can go back to the policy and look to refine it. But now we know for that next deal.
Yeah, and we knew when we passed the policy that as we got into it and we started to work with it, we would probably need to do some tweaks anyway. And so this is kind of illustrating that, right?
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate your research. Makes a big difference. I, for one, still had a lot of questions about this project. So I would just, I think, yes, it was a learning experience. And the next time we try this, I think we ought to make sure we get a little more information from the developer side than we got this time. There's still a lot of stuff up in the air there. So, but thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right. Steve.
Appreciate the due diligence you did on that. I've been really concerned about this. Not that I don't support a project going forward. It's just that we know these developers can pay this infrastructure out of their own resources. They are not poor people, and they want to do this development. To ask the public to foot the bond, when we may well need that bonding capacity to proceed with Country Club Road. So I think it's important that we exercise prudence, because the last thing we need is another train wreck of lost public money on such an investment. This investment is Isabel Circle can still move forward. Those people have enough resources to move this forward if they want to. I don't think we need to risk public money at it.
Thank you. David Huck or Peter Kelman, you have your hand up about this item. Keeping in mind that we're about to pass this without a vote or taking any action, but the floor is yours for the moment.
I just want to comment that this development agreement idea is a major strategy in the new city plan that's being put forward. So if this very first time there are glitches, that I hope, Josh, that you guys can figure out some way to make this work. Maybe not for this project, but to make this work in general. Or are we going to run into this same issue again and again? And if so, then this should not be a major strategy in the city plan. I thought it was a good one, but I now know of two cases, myself being the other, where it can't work. So I just hope some time will be put into figuring out how to make something like this work, or else get rid of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, it's a real concern for me, because what we've seen at lots of places, not only in Vermont but across the country, is that major housing developments can't be done without public participation in the cost of infrastructure. And so figuring out a way to do that is something we really, really need to do.
Yep.
Okay, thanks a lot, Josh.
Yep.
Can I make a comment, Jack?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
That's okay. I'm not sure how I could do that, but thank you for a moment. I want to go back to what Josh said, and I truly appreciate the work he put into this. He said the much higher interest rate. I don't want to lose track of that, and I want to underscore that. Also, the Bridge article in a couple issues back contrasted the city putting bond money into the Isabel Circle project, but not having enough money to do infrastructure on Country Club Road. I felt very, very concerned about that. Why are we putting money into this private investment when in fact we can't support our own project? So that's my comment, but don't lose track of the much higher interest rate that Josh mentioned. And Josh, thanks again for your great work. I was so worried about this one issue, and I'm so delighted that this is the outcome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. And just for the minutes, that's Giovanna Peoples, Montpelier resident.
Thank you so much, Jack.
You're welcome.
And city council members.
All right, next up. Thanks, Josh. Next up, budget review. I'm sorry? About, did you want to comment on this last thing we were just talking about?
This is what I was talking about with priorities, not just you, but other people in Montpelier. 28 housing units, as long as they're not luxury apartments, would be a lot to go a long way. And that sometimes you just have to take a loss as a city. Sometimes you just have to do it. That's part of what being government is taking losses. And if you can't do that, then you need to find a new job. There's a nice Wendy's right down the road.
Thank you. All right, do you want to say anything, sir? Shall I? Okay, I will start out. We're up to the discussion of the budget. Thanks, Sarah, as you're coming up. Thinking way back to almost a month ago to our meeting on December 11th, which was our first presentation of the budget, I started out by saying that we were going to be getting information on that occasion, and we were not expecting city council members to make any decisions on that night. And now we've spent a good bit of time on the budget, and now we are at the time where we're asking the council to make some preliminary decisions on the budget. The goal of our budget discussions tonight is to come out of the meeting with the council's proposed budget. We can continue to work on it. We have 2 public hearings scheduled, and we can make amendments and adjustments as we go forward. But when we come to the public hearings, we should be able to put before the voters a proposal that says, this is the budget proposed by your city council. And so my plan for tonight's discussion is to start with questions from the council on any topic, any department budget, anything that you might have to add, Sarah, and then go through the budget, essentially department by department, and ask for people to make any motions they might have to amend the budget that we have in front of us. And so, do you have anything to add to that at this point? You've updated us with a couple of late breaking things today, so we might want to start there.
Yeah, no, I don't have any huge updates. The only thing I wanted to call out and I sent out to you all was that I did review the school's presentation for their budget tonight. And it looks like right now, based on the formula, they are presenting a budget that has a roughly 3% tax decrease. That combined with our rates in the ballot items puts the overall tax rate increase at 1.13% as we sit right now. That's about $97 on the average home annually, average home being about $370,000. So I just wanted to provide that information. The school board is hearing that presentation, I would assume, right now too. But aside from that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll take some notes and we can proceed as you would like.
Thanks, Sarah. Palin.
Is the what was that? 1.13%. Is the difference between the last budget, the former last year budget and this year budget? So I'm not clear what we are talking about this.
So if you combine, so the school's budget proposal is down 3% from last year's budget. Our budget, before we do whatever we're going to do tonight, is up 6.9%, including the ballot items. If you put them all together, because they are a larger percentage of the full tax rate, if you put them all together, the overall tax rate that would go out to Montpelier voters would be a 1.13% increase over last year. That's if nothing changed at either budget tonight. That's what that would be.
Increase, we will add. Yeah, that's yeah. Okay,
Ours would
thank
still
you.
be higher, but theirs would be lower, and together it would be 1.1%.
So ours was how much last meeting we talked about the increase?
We were still at the 6.9.
Yeah, we haven't made any changes. The only change that I've notified you all about is what we heard from the school. So I would have to go back and redo the math to see exactly what that overall increase was last time. Weighted between the school and the city, but at this time it's 1.13.
So just to understand this and also for public knowledge, if we say yes to this budget proposal and we have a 6.9 increase, we have to add that 1.13 on top of it.
No. That's the combined. So right now the city's tax rate increase is 6.94%.
Yeah.
That includes the ballot items. With the schools right now, their tax rate has a decrease of 3.03%. When you combine those, because the school's portion is higher than the municipal portion, it combines to a 1.13% overall tax increase on the whole tax bill.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the
1.1 on top of our 6.9.
Okay.
It's 1.1 total.
We're about 40% of the tax bill. They're about 60% of the tax bill. So when you look at it all as a whole, like last year, we were at about 5%. And they were at 19%. So the overall rate was like 14 or 13 or 14 or something like that, because you put them together. This year, right now, as we sit today, the overall rate is at 1.1.
So the tax bill, it's confusing to people, I know, because we have two separate government bodies, the Montpelier Roxbury School District and the city. But the bills, property tax bills that people get are a single bill that includes all of it. And under the new developments where things stand with the schools, even if we adopt a budget at 6.94% for the city, the property tax bills that people get will go up about 1%. You're welcome.
We just wanted to give that context as we started. And of course, the school budget could change too. They've got a couple meetings and it's dependent on the yield that the legislature sets. So, but that's as we got that from the superintendent. I think I sent that out to you, and that's where they are right now. So that's the best information we have. We usually get asked that, what's the school doing and how do they look together? So we wanted to provide that as context at the beginning.
Anybody else have any questions? So
when do we find out about the yield?
That's a great question.
Too late, as I recall. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes. Yeah, we don't know when. Could be before they finish their budget. Might be, maybe not. I know that's a problem for schools. I mean, I'm no political prognosticator. would imagine that after the pounding that the legislature took last year over school taxes, that they're going to do everything they can to keep the yield where it is for this year and not suddenly jack people's school taxes up another 10%. But that's, take that and a quarter and still not have enough for coffee. So,
and we have heard from the legislature, they're saying, well, the first thing we got to do is deal with school funding. So they came back today. The governor's getting sworn in tomorrow, and they'll do what they'll do. All right. Anybody else have Carrie?
No, I don't have a question.
Okay.
So I'll wait.
Okay. Adrian, you look like you're about to formulate a question, but you're not quite there. Is that right? Okay. Mhm. Okay. So right now, it seems that people on the council feel that you have the information you need to proceed. And so the question is, are there any proposals, any motions to make any changes to the to the budget that's in front of us? And what I said in my email to you that last night that I would do is I would just go down department by department to make sure that everybody got a chance to be heard. And so literally, I just printed out the list of all the departments from the city's webpage, many of which we really haven't discussed at all for good reasons. But I'll just go down. Yeah, Sal.
Did Tim hear what Sarah presented?
Did you didn't hear what Sarah presented, but you read the email that Sarah.
You read the email.
from
Okay.
Sarah. Okay.
I have a copy if you need it too.
All right. So, are there any motions to change anything about the city assessors, the Department of the City Assessor? Okay.
I'm not making a motion to change anything about the assessor.
I know what you're going to do. But go ahead.
You do. Well, two things that I will recuse myself when we talk about the city clerk's budget. But I also wanted to say something just more generally and broadly that when we first started this conversation about priorities and about kind of what we wanted to see out of a budget, we each shared our thoughts about what we would like to see. And what I said at the time was, ideally, I'd like it to not be a larger increase than it was last year, which was like 4.9%. And so what we have in front of us is 4.9% increase plus 2% for the capital improvement plan increase, which we didn't do last year, and which is still not as much as we need to do. But we have to continue to increase the capital improvement plan, or we're just going to never get out of the hole that we're already in, that we've been in from underfunding it all this time. So I think it's really key, and especially because infrastructure and capital investment is something that the public has told us they want very strongly, and which I also just believe is a core function of municipal government. So I think it's important to keep that 2%. And so if I go back to kind of what my comfort level is with what increases, I feel very comfortable with this budget. I feel like the staff did a lot of work looking at the priorities that we gave them, looking at where they could cut and where they couldn't cut. And especially when we add on the fact that it's very likely that the overall tax bill increase will be only 1.1% when we consider the school tax rate. I feel very comfortable with it the way it is presented right now.
Oh, yeah, I should have said anyone else can make that kind of overview statement too, and certainly I appreciate your comments, Gary.
Make a process suggestion.
Yeah.
I'm not a voting member, so just an idea is, instead of making a motion on each department, might be good to just go down through, see if there's questions, and if somebody has something they want to hold, for later discussion, because usually what happens is you make a motion at the end for the total. You start, you might say, well, gee, then we could put this back, and then you're unmoving a motion. So you could set it aside for future. I'd like to consider reducing this or adding this, and then we have a running tally, and at the end we go through and say which end up. So it's the same thing without you having to vote on each department.
I think that's a good point. We kind of got ourselves twisted around a little bit last year by doing it that way. Sarah, at some point you might want to put up that interactive worksheet.
Do you want me to do it now or wait until we're ready to make motion? It's up to you.
Then the things are on hold. We can put on.
Yeah. Mhm. Anybody else have any overall comments to make? Tim.
It still feels to me like we've had a couple of years of pretty steep increases in property taxes. And really, I think the goal of trying to get it in line with CPI is still one I'd like to at least see what the options are to consider to know if we can get there. Our budget is, as we know, 70-something% labor, and we have built our staff gradually over time. And I think it's something we've just got to be mindful of as the community moves forward, and keeping that overhead level under control so that we can also, pay for our capital improvements and things that we really need to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? I'll lay out where I'm coming from too, which people have heard before, which is that I think our city staff has done a tremendous amount of work to get us to the 6.94% level. And I think that that's where we need to be to present a responsible budget that really satisfies the needs. And we're not talking about wants here. We're talking about the needs of the city and our community residents. And my personal feeling is it would not be responsible to cut positions or activities below where we are now. But I only get to vote in the case of a tie, but that's how I'm approaching this budget. Ready to go? Yeah, Palin.
So I don't know if it's for public knowledge yet, but we heard that some of the positions will be like people are leaving, right? So is it possible not to hire people for that, just keep that positions on hold? Will it be good for the budget, or city really needs to hire new people, then it can function in a better way? It's a general question. So.
We have two people that are leaving now. One was already projected to be removed from the budget, so we certainly would not fill that one. The second one, assuming there was adequate funding, we would fill. We're already basically taking 3.6 positions and combining the work of that into two, and one of those two is this position that's vacant. So we would be taking 3.6 positions and combining them into one person, which means we'd then be spreading it over other, it would definitely have an impact on the work that gets done, and we'd have to make some big decisions about what we did and didn't do. It would probably mean we would not have an open city hall to the public. We'd have it closed, appointment only, because we wouldn't be able to handle walk-ins. And I don't believe in that, frankly. But if we don't have people that can be at, or will be open at certain times, because when no one's there, no one's there. And sometimes we're out of the office at meetings, and if there's no one there. So it would be a big change, or it would be, we're getting sneers from the audience. It would be pulling people from key positions to sit at a front desk, to staff that, instead of being the finance director or the accountant or something like that. So it would be, I think it would certainly we would have to make some big operational decisions. I mean, anything can be done, but it would be a change.
Bill, for the benefit of the people who may not have heard this all before, could you just give a little bit of an overview of what the personnel changes are that are embedded in the budget?
Yeah.
I know we didn't talk about having you do this, but
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to see if I can remember it all. So we are proposing to, we have three part-time positions, the treasurer, the tax collector, and the assessor's assistant. Those would all be removed. There's a reduction of a position at the senior center, full-time position that's removed, and that gentleman has already found another position, will be leaving, so we won't refill that. One of the maintenance positions at the in the parks, in the recreation department, is being eliminated. The plan right now is that then the parks would help cover that. So it's essentially also a reduction in parks because they're losing a person half the, during key season to be doing work at both the rec and park. So it's a reduction in parks as well. So those are the sort of positions that had existing individuals in them that were being proposed to be removed. And of course, they all know about that. And then there is a proposal to restore the police officer that was cut last year that had been, so would be an add back. And as part of the consolidations with the finance positions, there would be a 1.2 reduction and being backfilled by a 1, and then the 3.6 being backfilled by 2. I think I got that right. So,
and to be clear, the functions that are being carried out by these people now are all still gonna be done by somebody.
Yes, although we would probably have to look at that. There are things that are being done that may not be able to be done on as regular a basis. And we've only really just begun to talk about what those might look like, but so yeah, I certainly there's a lot of things that need to be done, but we would have to not do some things. And, we could probably give you a better idea of that if that's really where we're going. But, if you look at, everyone's kind of at max. So you'd just be having, something's not going to get done or something's going to fall through the cracks. I wish I could have a more articulate list and maybe, come back another week. We might have a better idea. But, we have newsletters and informations and weekly memos and various things that happen. We've already had, as we get, postings that we miss, then those have to be done correctly. And so we need to pay attention to that. We get a lot of public records requests. That's the key position. That's one of the key positions that handles those. So, I think, there'll be any number of things. And, some things like public records requests and postings that we are legally required to do. So those have to take priority. And so some of the other things that, I think are beneficial to the community become, then it's like, how come I didn't get told about this? And why didn't I hear about this?
I see the city clerk has his hand up.
There we go. I just wanted to make sure, I think Bill mentioned that City Hall would be by appointment only, but that's the city manager's office. I just want to be clear on that there is no concern about the city clerk's office being open its regular hours. That's all.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks.
Council members, where would you like to go from here? Is there any Tim, we heard from you that you've got a general idea that you'd like to see some reductions. Do you have any identified parts of the budget that you'd like us to be looking at?
It looks like from the information we've been provided to do that, we still need to find $424,000. And if you look at it that way and start going through positions, it requires some significant changes. I know I took Bill's memo earlier on, and there were different tiers, and kind of looked toward the next tier that we hadn't been to yet. Just one area to look at. Did you have recommendations, Bill, on the next step if we went for to find the 424,000?
I don't, yeah, I mean, I would wait to see where the council as a group formally asks for something and gives us some idea of priorities. Like I better be clear. I don't expect the council necessarily to pick specific positions or whatever, but if the council can say, this is a number we'd like to get to, and this is this is off limits, and this is the areas we'd want to look at, then, much like when we did the initial budget, you said public safety, public works, capital, we want to preserve those. And so we did. And that pushed everything to everything else. And so if, any kind of direction we can get, then we'll try to put together the best package. I want to be clear. We want to work to get to your result. But also if at the same time, if you also just said, pick a number, whether it's 424,000 or any other number, with no other guidance, it puts us in a position of coming back saying, well, here's what we came up with. And it's like, well, that's not what we meant. Right. So, so we're trying to figure out how to work together to get the result that you want. And I did do a quick calculation, just by the way, if we did do 424,000, it would actually be an overall reduction of about a 0.27%, counting in the school rate. 343,000 would get it to no change. And 190,000 would be about 0.5% increase. Just some other.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this memo that came out January 3rd that had the breakdown.
Well, that was for the city's tax. So,
correct.
Right. And then if you combine it with the school, that's what those numbers are to get the overall,
right,
assuming the school doesn't change. Yeah, no, those numbers are still accurate.
I mean, so to get to 424,000, just to start throwing out, how do you get there? I mean, what's it take? I mean, to give you a sense of what it would be. I think one thing with cuts over at least our time here, the city manager's staff has been pretty intact. And I think that's probably one area we've got to look at. So, if you do the sustainability coordinator, you've got a communications coordinator, you've got a clearly administrative assistant role that just is empty or coming empty. Mm-hmm. Sarah had sent out a notice about a transparency memo for software. There's about 44,000.
Oh, that was in mine. Yeah, right, the stuff that we're cutting.
So if you add that in, we're still not at 424, and
we've already cut that. That's already done. The 44 is already out.
Okay, and then just from my history in town and life, it seems like we've got a parks director and a rec director. It really seems like in the big picture, we need to evolve toward one administrative director of parks and recreation. We haven't really invested well in our rec program. We have a lot of old buildings and facilities, and we're not ready to invest in them right now. In past life as city or school board member and watching how it worked, our rec director was also in charge of facilities and handled the coordination. Now we have facilities person in the city. We have a rec director, and the schools have a facilities person. It was all handled by one person previously, not that long ago. So my proposal may be to take a position like the rec director and make it a half-time position. Trying to find ways to get to this number. And then I don't know how people feel about city council stipends, but willing to throw that into if people are willing. So, I mean, that gets us to that range, and that's the kind of changes we're going to need to make if we're going to go there.
So to be clear, you're suggesting we cut the sustainability coordinator, cut the communications director, cut the city manager's administrative assistant, cut the record director to part-time or half-time, and eliminate the city council stipend. And what's the total of that?
I don't have it handy because I actually had the 44,000 in for the software. So.
I just want to
we will have you will have a chance to be heard. Okay.
I mean, certainly could do that. If you cut the executive assistant, the communications position. We've already cut the assessor's assistant, who's the other person in the city manager's office that sits there. And we've already cut the position at the senior center. There would be no more DPW newsletter. There would be no more senior center newsletter. I mean, that was a position that do our agendas. I mean, we would have to, we hadn't really talked about this because we thought we had it covered. But if we really were to, we have to do the assessing work. And the biggest piece of the assessing work is the business personal property tax because it's small. There's a lot of parcels, a lot to handle. We would have to stop collecting that. And that is about $400,000 in revenue that the city gets. So essentially, we would not have the wherewithal to collect that revenue, and it would cost exactly what we're cutting. Right now, the plan is that the executive assistant will take over the assessing work, and the communications person will assist with the weekly memos and agendas to some extent, as well as also picking up the newsletter portions of the senior center work. And the fundraising portion at the senior center would have to be handled maybe by contract or something like that. So, I mean, those are just that is the way we've got it set up right now. But if we were to essentially eliminate any ability to do assessing support, we would have to then take a long look at what we're doing for assessing and how we're going to handle the next reappraisal and all those kind of things. So that there's a very real, we don't talk about that a lot because, Jane's just been there and it all happens automatically, but it doesn't happen automatically. It's actually a bunch of work that someone has to do that is required by law.
Okay. So I think this is constructive that we've finally gotten some ideas on the table of what at least one member might want to change, and I wonder if there are other members who have things they would want to change in the budget that we have before us now. So,
well, I wanted to get our increase down to 3.5, which is sort of CPI. I mean, I feel like we've been saved by a buzzer beater, but, not every game ends that way. And I think had this not happened, and it still hasn't actually happened, we would still be looking at a pretty good increase. And even if we went through with the budget as it stands now, we'd probably be faced with something similar next year, given the kinds of things that are coming up with the union contracts and so on. I mean, it seems like and I know it's been hard on the staff, and I know they've worked hard to make the cuts they've made. But it's hard to look at it as an opportunity, but in a way, it means taking a second look at what we do and how we do it, because I don't see this getting any better if we don't do things differently somehow. And I don't have specifics to say do it this way and not that way. I'm just saying we probably, given the experience that I've had in my career in business, it's very easy to always want to do things the way you've always done them. And I'm sure you can talk to Kurt about the contractors that he deals with day in and day out. That's what they want. They want to do it. Even the developers that we're talking with, they want to build it the way they've always built it. And things change. And I think we need to make that effort. Now, how far we go, I don't know, but I just feel like we've been saved at the bell here, and it's just not good enough.
So I understand that, and I think you're right. Everything's at a point in time, and we've been whittling away at this for years. Like, this isn't the first year we've had to do this kind of thing. And so things, there isn't a lot of room left. And I do feel like if we're going, I appreciate that. And we've talked about that internally, like what's going to happen next year. And hopefully not a 25% increase in health insurance. I mean, that really, you take that 500,000 out and we'd probably just be sitting here saying, great, done. To provide for it's not just what we want to do, but it's what folks want to do, what folks want in the community. We get, you think about all the community, all the information we get about, we didn't hear, the communication wasn't, how come they can't give us a notice? Why can't this happen? Why didn't we have a public forum? We won't be able to do any of that. I mean, it'll just be, we have had, and I say we, I don't just mean us, that the communities have an ambitious agenda. They've wanted, we've taken on things. We've talked about rental registries and ordinances for efficiency for buildings and all these kind of things that are important things. But we've been asked to do a lot of that and happy to do it. But so I think and I don't know how we get to this. If I was sitting in your seat, I'd be saying, what the heck's he talking about? How do we get to a place where we say we have to reduce the budget, but there are things that we're not going to do without. And when someone's mad and sending you an email and calling you next summer saying, this happened and I didn't get any notice, that's right. We made that decision in January. And we're sorry, but that's the level of service you can expect. And frankly, that hasn't been my experience. It's we have this process, and then we vote, and then it's like, okay, now everything's back to normal, and we expect the same things that have always happened, and we expect the sidewalks to get plowed the same way, and we expect the leaves to get picked up. And what do you mean you're not doing that anymore? So what I'm struggling with, I think the staff is just struggling with, what is it that you can live without? It's not what we want to do. It's the services that our residents, we're not profiting from this. So it's where do you want to see, a reduction in service? Because, that's how, and I don't know how we get there. I'm kind of frustrated too.
So yeah, Steve, you won't have I won't be calling on any members of the public until after we've had discussion from council. Okay.
Let me just add one thing about other options, and one is revenue. And I would really like to explore sales tax. I mean, a 1% sales tax local option. I think there's a good case that could be made for it, particularly to the public who watch us go through this process every year. And I would also like to revisit the short-term rental ordinance, because I think it's also a revenue source, and but it also feeds the housing issue. So those are two things that we're not going to do that tonight, but I think we ought to look to putting those back on an agenda sometime in the near future to see where we go for those.
And I know you know this, but just for general information, the local options tax, if you were to consider, has to be, at a city vote. So it would either be March, or this year it wouldn't be till next March, unless we called a special meeting.
Carrie, it looked like you were about to say something.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that this isn't exactly a math problem, and it's tempting to look at it, especially when we've got a spreadsheet, as a simple math problem, and we've got numbers and we want to try to make them balance and come out to a certain number. But this isn't a business. This is municipal government. This is service. We're providing services to our citizens with their own money. And, that's my background, is working in government. And I have a master's in public administration, where I've learned a lot about budgeting and how you make those priorities, and how different it is from running a business. It is not the same as running a business. So while there may be comparisons, it's not exactly the same. And so we have to think about what we want to accomplish, what we need to accomplish primarily. That's our first job. And then we have to kind of balance that with what can people actually afford. So an unreasonable tax increase, we don't want to do that. So in that case, it does come to be sort of a math problem, but there's a balance there. We can't look at it as just what can we cut? We need to, if we're going to think about cutting anything, we need to think about what services do we no longer want to provide? So if we can't just say, well, a communications coordinator costs this much money, so we just get rid of it and then we say that much money, that's done. We better to say we can only do so much with the money that we have. And we don't think that communications function is important enough to spend money on, and let that drive us. I mean, that's just how we should be approaching the budget process in general. And it's bothering me that we're not doing that. And I haven't been doing a great job of that either. So I'm trying to remind myself of that. And I also want to say that, no, I'll stop. That's all.
Adrian.
Thank you, Carrie, for reminding us of that. And I'll just say that this is my first budget season and haven't slept in weeks because I can't imagine what the staff is going through, just listening to us talk about, the budget and positions. And I can't imagine it just being incredibly, it's just a stressful, process for the staff. And just thank you all for providing all this information. It was so much information to read and go through, and I've gone through it like 10 times. And, I'm trying to understand how your government works and the budgets and the positions and the legacy of where we've been and where we want to go into the future. And, just thinking about the future and that, I can't predict what's going to happen next year or the next 5 years from now, but I can't imagine our world getting any better and us getting a huge influx of money that we're going to wave this magic wand and everything's going to be great. And so I think that we're at a moment in time where we're at a crossroads where we have I look at this as an opportunity for the future. And I think I differ from Bill in having these, terms of, we're going to close City Hall, we're not going to be able to do all these services. Like, it's very negative feeling for me. And, it brings my morale down because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I moved to this city with my family and my kids and I want these services. I pay for my taxes and now we're not going to have anything. Like, that's really, really discouraging. But I feel like if there was a flip in how we think about this, we can change the narrative and change the script. I feel like we can look at this in a positive way and look at our organizational structure and look at how we operate and really right size our government. Tim made a motion of positions and, I think it's a conversation, not, bringing back what Carrie said, it's not necessarily about the money, but it's about how we operate as a government and what services do we want to provide to our citizens. And I think it's a really important conversation that we have of what is that stop doing list. It might be a pause doing list for the next, 1 to 5 years until we, build some houses and bring in some families and, reinvigorate our schools with students and have, more folks using our pool and recreation center and, utilizing the senior center. But I think we have to focus on what's important right now and looking at our strategic plan and really having that drive what our stop or pause doing list is between now and the next, 5 years. And, Tim mentioned the sustainability coordinator. I know that the net zero, priority has been a huge one, but maybe that's one that we just put on pause for the next couple of years while we focus on housing and getting some homes built and getting some new families into the city, which builds our grand list, which brings us more money. And so I think really flipping the switch and having this be an opportunity to really look at our government and propose some systemic changes that are just not one-off programs, but looking into the future. I think this is how we should be thinking about this.
One of the things that I was thinking about that from our conversation at our last meeting and our conversation tonight is that the city council does have a strategic plan. And we spent time working on it in 2024. And we heard from all the departments, and we had a council retreat to go over what our strategic plan was going to be. And we adopted the strategic plan unanimously. And I think it's worth just going over what the elements of the strategic plan are. And there aren't that many. We wanted to keep them concise and manageable. And they are build and maintain sustainable infrastructure, create more housing, rebuild and plan for future resilience in the face of climate change, practice good environmental stewardship, advance the economy to improve community prosperity for residents and local businesses so that the people's basic needs are met, and improve public health and safety for all. And underneath all of that, all of those things that are goals, we all agree also that a fundamental obligation that we have to the population is to maintain a well-functioning city government that provides basic public services to the people. So, police, fire, roads, things that people can't go out and buy for themselves on the free market. People can't go out and buy a park for themselves, but we have parks that we can provide. And those are basic things. And so I think that those, as Carrie pointed out, those are what should be driving where we're going with this. We've got some proposals for changes that could be made, and has anyone, Carrie or Palin, sorry.
From the proposed list, because we have some kind of specific ideas now, maybe Bill or the staff can tell us which one of the items on this list is really, really mandatory. So we should not think about it, but maybe some of them are, yes, we can revise or change. So maybe we can do that. And also strategic planning, there's a reason why it is called planning, because it is not set in stone. Usually in the outside of, I don't know how municipal government does, it's revised every year, because strategic plannings are for usually 5 to 10 years. And you revise them, you revise your goals, you revise your tasks, because it's planning and everything is changing. So you have to go back and check everything. Maybe we can do about that too. We can just check, okay, with the new budget, with the new conditions, maybe some of the goals shouldn't be there anymore because we cannot afford to reach that goal. So it's another idea. Maybe we can consider because again, it's a planning, it's a plan. So yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have any proposed changes to the budget that we have in front of us tonight? And if you do not, then I'd like to, for one thing, I agree with Sal. I think we should talk about the sales tax, but not hearing any other changes. I'd like to look at what Tim has proposed and see what level of support there is, because if you're the only one who supports it, there's not much point in spending a lot of time on it, right?
Make a motion, we can take a vote, you'll find out. I mean, I don't. Or if there's other things to discuss.
I think that's fine.
I mean, that.
Or
All right.
And do you want to do them one at a time? Or what do you want?
I think my quick math, just to verify, Sarah, was it roughly 426 when you added it up?
So I just want to be clear. I think I might have missed one. You wanted council stipends, you wanted the sustainability coordinator, the communications coordinator, the admin assistant, and then which other position? Was there another position you wanted?
Make rec director part-time, like 50%.
I would like to discuss each of these separately because people might have a feeling about one and not about the other.
Yeah, it's really for conversation, but if you want me to make a motion to get the conversation going, I'll do it, obviously. But if you don't need the motion, fine.
You don't need the motion. Okay. Right. Palin? Yeah, it looks like you were going to say something.
We see the changes on this interactive one, once Sarah is already doing so. Thanks.
You take any public comment, other suggestions, or you gonna keep a subset?
I will take other comments. We're not there yet. Yeah, I know that we have a number of members of the public with their hands up, and I always get to them, and we have public hearings scheduled because I want to make sure we hear from everybody.
Tim, you said 427. 427.
6-4. So yeah.
Okay, actually, at this point, I will take public comments as we're developing a list of things to discuss. And I'll start with the people online. I see 3 hands online up, starting with Peter Kelman. Oh, still muted.
You're muted, Peter. Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Okay, sorry. I just would like to first of all say that I think that what Adrian said, what Sal said, and what Carrie said should really be listened to. It's not a question of whether we are going to do things or not do them. The question is whether or not we can do the things in ways that are more affordable than they appear to be now. And that means just questioning whether we're operating. It's not saying, oh, we're going to not be able to have the city manager's office open all day just by appointment. No, that's not the issue. The issue is, what are we doing in ways that are not efficient or not working? The second thing is, this is not a zero-sum game. We really need to look at revenue. There are a number of revenue possibilities, and I think that's a separate discussion. That's not the one we have right here. But we really should be serious about looking at revenues, and we should be looking at it in a regional way. I think somebody mentioned, we have parks, we have facilities, we have recreation. Other towns are facing the same problem we have, and they don't have those things. What things can we bring in money from around from other towns around us? Now, as far as on the spending side, look, elephant in the room. The most expensive part of our municipal government are salaries and benefits. Anytime you have a full-time position, you've got not just what their salary is, but you've got the benefits that go along with it. And Jack, I'm sorry, I was not suggesting that we screw people by bringing in people from the outside. Let's take a look at the positions and see what positions could be done by contracting out. Not talking about somebody who drives a truck, not talking about most of the union workers, but there are positions that could, and I think the assessor is a perfect example. The assessor, I believe, is on a contract, not an employee. I may be wrong about that, but I believe it is. There are other positions like that. We need to take a look at, honestly, that's where you get the savings, not by getting rid of people, but by having people who are less expensive, We have some very, very expensive people on our payrolls. Not just their salaries, but their benefits as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Next up, Giovanna. You're still muted. There's nothing we need to do on our end for this at this point, right? Is there a little line drawing of a microphone on your screen? Yeah, we're not hearing you.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
So there was a dashboard saying the host does not allow you to unmute, and someone just turned it off. So anyway, thank you. I'm Giovanna Peebles, and I live up on Woodcrest Drive, and I'm not sure my city council member is, I think, Pellin, right? District 2. One specific thing that I believe is a nice thing, but not a necessity, is getting rid of leaves. So I would immediately remove that from our budget. I think that is a ludicrous thing. When I see the leaf person going around, that's ridiculous. But I want to take us to a 40,000 foot level. I have been talking to our Washington County legislators to remind them that our education budgets, our town budgets are intimately related to our health policy and the costs of health. And that if we're going to fix the first two things, we have to fix the state of our health costs. And that you're seeing your 22%, 25% insurance costs. We have been talking for decades about universal Medicare. We have been talking for a long time about transforming and reinventing how we pay for our health costs. So you can't solve that tonight. You cannot, the city of Montpelier cannot solve that. But as individuals, Dave Bellini is one constituent in Montpelier who is very active in this. We need to individually do what we can to transform our health policy in Vermont and in the country, because they go hand in hand. These 22% costs are killing us. And that is right there is $500,000. So I just want you to always pay attention to what's happening in the legislature about health policy, health costs. Why are our costs so ridiculously unaffordable? So that's all I wanted to say. I have been reminding our legislators that these things are intimately connected and that you cannot look at cost of education, our property taxes at the town level without looking at our health costs. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. David Huck.
Hi, my name is David. I live on Dunpatrick Circle, and I think I should actually consider a run for council when my children are able to put themselves to bed. And I'd like to really second what Carrie said about we should decide what services we don't want and cut and reorganize there instead of thinking of this as a math problem. It's not a business. I coming a little late to the game, I don't really understand why the CPI is the metric. It seems like an arbitrary one. And to me, $25 a month of an increase in my tax rate is something that I can afford. I don't make a lot of money, but I can save, some coffee or something that I would not normally go out to get, or in another, like I could balance my budget through other means to save $25 of money to devote to city services that I value. And I wrote this in an email, I think, to most of the counselors, but I realized I might have missed a few of you. That I think having people is important. And when the town floods again, we're going to need those people. And I assume they worked overtime and probably without compensation, the ones who are exempt, like the managers. And I think if we demoralize them and they leave and we end up with other people, we're going to regret that when, the next flood happens or the next emergency or whatever, when we don't have a communications director. So anyway, I'm skeptical of this whole hold it to the CPI thing. And I'm also, a lot of people say like, oh, developers do this, developers think that. I happen to work for a construction company in California, and I'm curious what developers they talk to and how we know all these things about developers and people like that, because there's a wide breadth of what people do, and the stories that we tell, I think, sometimes represent our own personal experiences and maybe are sometimes not as grounded in the possibilities and the realities of today. So anyway, I'd love to pay more taxes.
Great. Me too. Thanks, David. Dave Bellini.
I maybe don't want to pay more taxes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate what I've heard tonight from folks. I don't think we can maintain the status quo. Montpelier cannot be all things to all people, even though we'd like to. I just barely started paying attention to city government. I guess there were 10 less employees when John Holler was mayor. City Hall was open, government seemed to function. We bulked up the city, I guess maybe when times were good. And they're not as good right now. And I don't like the fact that what I'm seeing is the budget is like this 1 year compartmentalized thing, and then everybody forgets about it until next year. If you have to make cuts this year, these cuts should have been made a year ago, 8 months ago. You wait until you're up against the wall, and I really think that sometimes the city leaders, much like the schools used to say, well, we'll have to cut all the sports programs because they were the most popular. City Hall, we won't be able to get in. It'll be by appointment. Well, that's kind of silly. I don't agree with that. I think you can do something. I think you can do better than you've done with the 7%. There's no point in me being specific. I don't even know what a director of net zero is. I never heard of that. I mean, it almost sounds silly to me, but maybe it's not. I don't even know what net zero is. I also heard somebody say we were saved by the bell, and I guess I missed something. Are we going to be in better shape than we thought? And is that just a 1 year thing? Because really, you have to think in advance. You have to have. Wouldn't it be great if our budget had carry forward money? Do you guys ever have that? Sort of budget things the way Bill Clinton did when he was president. Had a surplus. That type of management style. I love Montpelier, and I haven't got all the answers, but I think we can be in a better place than we are. And it is difficult for some people to pay the taxes. It's sounds a little bit like let them eat cake sometimes. It is difficult for some people to pay their taxes. I know some people that are really, really struggling, and that's very real. Okay, and it would be great if we could get into City Hall. I had a very serious injury. I'm using a walker. I can't be there in person. So what I'm hearing is, the elevator broke, and that's that. It's not going to happen. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you.
Two things. First of all, thanks for your comments. Just so you know, factually, The last year that Mayor Haller was in office, we had 112 point something employees. The current budget is 114 point something employees. So there was a time when it got up higher, but at this point we're only two off from where we were then. Just factually. And then with regard to the elevator, we're basically just waiting for FEMA to approve our plans to put in a new elevator. We're not just sitting here saying, oh, well, we're actively working on that and frustrated by how long it's taking.
And one of the things that has been a discussion over and over as we talk about getting City Hall rehabbed and back to where we were, if we wanted to spend the taxpayers' money instead of waiting for FEMA, maybe we could get it done faster, but then we'd be spending millions of dollars of Montpelier taxpayers' monies instead of FEMA money. So I don't see anyone else's hands up online. Is there anyone in the room who would like to be heard at this point?
Yeah, Steve Whitaker. I am aware that several of the district meetings, the people are outspoken. They don't want to just keep this level funded. They want to cut the administrative staff. Folks are adamant that we are bloated at the top. I gave you a list last 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. But, with a handful of positions are costing us $1 million. And it's absolutely absurd. Do we need an assistant city manager for a city this small at $174,000 with benefits? I don't think so. That's to take action like deeming the whole country club property, a sensitive area and, order some more signs to post it. I mean, this is absurd what we're doing to staff the homelessness task force. We do not need the bloat that we have. And what I hear is scare tactics. We should ban the scare tactics about you won't be able to get into City Hall. We're leaving people outside for 2 hours after the Good Sam closes the shelter for 2 hours before the bus comes, and they could easily be in here using the lobby and the bathroom. It's just like poor management. It's fundamentally poor management. But administrative costs have to go down. VC3 has to be renegotiated or trimmed or put that out to bid. We can buy laptops. We can buy laptops on a lease purchase. We can afford laptops. We don't need all their laptops. Dispatch, a regional dispatch operation, which was sabotaged by Bill and Barry officials, it will be more affordable for our city, but it's going to take some planning. We have to undo the damage that was done. Our capital budget needs to go up. It's not sufficient how little you've raised it for paving. And it's not anywhere compliant with statute, which is going to get us a growth center designation by fall. A 5-year budget, it doesn't include East State Street. East State Street is a capital budget. Despite its source of funding, it still needs to be in a capital budget to be compliant with state law. You can, wrinkle your forehead, but you haven't read state law, not about growth centers and not about capital budgets. So resilience priority needs to go up. And that's where Country Club Road could play a huge role. If that's our staging area for Country Club Road, that may entitle us to some of this new 63 million that's coming to the 68 million that's coming to the state. If we pitch that as our resilient staging ground for our next floods, that could potentially pay for the water and sewer to get up there. Transit center revenue, I raised it. It's a viable issue to get revenue from Green Mountain Transit and or bargain it against our contribution or bargain it against transportation to the Country Club Road. We should be charging rent, fair market value rent for that. We could also should be enforcing the noise ordinance for cars and blocking the crosswalks.
Thank you. That's your 3 minutes.
Yeah, as if you really wanted to hear what you need to hear to do a good job with this. Are you just going through the motions, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Mr. Sargent.
Thank you. I've heard a lot about.
Why don't you just mention your name again, please?
Jacob Sargent, 14 Franklin Street, Montpelier. And I'm probably going to knock that over, so I'm going to stop doing that. I've heard a lot about diversity of revenues, more people in here. What were you saying about the short-term rentals? That there is a obvious thing that's staring us here in the face, and that is people in the real estate sector here are making a lot of money off people and businesses. The book garden down there wasn't able to fix the basement where they actually make a lot of revenue because their landlord refused to fix it after the flood. Whether it's banks just letting houses sit empty because it's just cheaper, whether it's real estate, private and Hapland Group, whatever you want to go, that there needs to be change in ordinances as well as laws to actually institute fines. That if you have a house just sitting there for how many long, that the bank should be fined. That if you're a real estate either manager or a private one, that if you're either not following the contract or you're just making stuff up out of whole cloth, that you need to be fined at least something per day. I feel like they would increase the budget, help people, and then start to fix some of the stuff around town. A lot of it has to do with real estate, private or otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do not see any other hands raised online. I do not see any other hands raised in the room. It is time for our 8:30 break, and we have some things to discuss when we get back. 10 minutes. Okay, folks. I'm apologize for coming back a little bit late, but sometimes people need the break more than other times. And I think this is one of those times. So we have a couple of proposals to discuss concerning expenditures. I wanted to start out by talking about something that a couple of people have brought up, and the city manager has sent us a memo about it, and that is local options taxes, because that could have an impact on our revenue, and that could have an impact on where we're going with this. So, Bill, why don't you just tell us where we stand?
Sure. At the last meeting, we were asked to provide information on local options tax, kind of how it works, who had it, and what our history with it had been. So we sent out a little summary of all of that. I think there's a lot of stuff that is of interest, but I think the main point is that based on the most recent full fiscal year, FY24, we would project to get just short of $600,000 in a local option sales tax. We've actually estimated lower than that, just in case, sort of $500,000 to $600,000. But that's really about the shortest version I can provide. We did realize afterward, and again, I don't want to make any promises that aren't accurate, but it is worth noting that fiscal year is the flood year. So there may have been less sales receipts in the city than normal, but I don't want to count chickens that we don't know. But so
and to adopt a local options tax at this point, we do not need the permission of the legislature. It simply requires a vote of the citizens of Montpelier, and we can. Legislature said that any city can do it that votes to do it. So
procedurally, what does it require?
You'd have to put it on. So we'll be having public hearings on the warning next couple meetings. So in theory, if you wanted to, have it, we would put it on a draft of the ballot, the warning, so for next week and the week after, and people would come in and offer their comments. And then once you vote to approve the ballot, you'd be putting it on the ballot, and then the voters would vote on it in March. And if they passed it, then we send a letter to the state and they set it up and start collecting it for us.
And we have another public meeting about the ballot after we go to
The next 2
press,
weeks.
right? But I mean, isn't there another one between?
Yeah, so then we have a public information hearing at the last meeting in February before the vote, just so people can find out. At that point, we can't change anything, but people can find out what's on the ballot. But yeah, but procedurally, that's all that's required. You put it on a ballot, and voters vote it. We have, like I said, we've always tried to give chance for people to have public comment. I'm sure there's people that would like to comment on that, but anyway, but yeah, that's all that's required.
But it doesn't leave much time for, information dissemination and education of folks on. I mean, the situation has changed. It's failed numerous times. Every time it's been proposed, I think.
Well, the sales tax has actually only been proposed once.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so what my point in bringing it up tonight was that if there's enough interest on the council to have more of a discussion of it, we should decide that now so we can get it on our agenda for the public hearing for next week. And so I'm looking to get a feel for what people think about that, given that it's a potential revenue source, and there are a number of things that we can do with the revenue if we chose to do it. Colchester, I think it was, adopted the local option sales tax, voted years ago to stockpile the money year after year after year, and they eventually raised enough money to build a new recreation center. Without debt, just raise that money. And I think obviously took some discipline to every year not go into it for other purposes. And they raised the money for that. We could dedicate it to more paving if we wanted to do that. We could dedicate it to buying down the tax rate if it passes. We obviously can't put it into this year's budget because we don't know if it's going to pass. But in the future, we could just decide, well, this is another source of revenue and it's just going into the general fund. And so I'm just interested in getting a sense from people on whether you think it's worth further discussion and placement on the agenda for next week.
With that sales tax, while we wouldn't put it into the FY26 budget, if voters approved it in March and we moved it through to the state, it's likely that we could get it set up and collect maybe half a year's worth of sales tax, which is something we likely would know when we were setting the tax rate, which could result in setting a lower tax rate than what we're talking about right now, because we would have the voter approval to move that ahead. So maybe conservatively, we could bring in 250,000 from that, which may help offset the tax rate at rate setting time, but not until voters approve it.
That's basically 2%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tim.
Talk about the mechanics of it, but so how does it work? It's like a sales tax. The state collects it and then keeps a part of it, and
Yeah, so the state
we get the rest.
Yeah, so the state has a sales tax now. So they just collect it the same way. You have a business in Montpelier, you add the extra %, you collect it, you send it to the state, just like you remit your sales tax now. And then the state keeps 30% of it, which they then reallocate out to pilot towns. So it's been a big boon for this Montpelier with these other towns doing it. And then they mail us quarterly. That's the way the rooms, meals, and alcohol tax works now. We get a quarterly check for what they've collected for that last quarter. And so we don't have any administration costs or anything like that. So some of the state, I think 5% of the state's collection is for their fee for doing this. And the other 25% goes into the pilot fund. And I think there's some discussion about what to do with that because the pilot fund is now pretty much filled. So there's been some talk about reducing that how much the state keeps and letting the locals keep more money because they don't need as much to redistribute each year. So, because they've hit 100% now of payment lieu of taxes on municipal taxes, statewide, not just for us. But that's not settled. But I know it's a topic of discussion: is can they turn more money back to the locals for this tax? So it would just increase our take.
Adrian, you look like you're about to say something.
I mean, what is the risk of not moving forward, right? So if we move forward, we got, input from the public. I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with that. And, I would like to be prepared to share. I would like to hear some success stories. Looks like there's a whole bunch of municipalities that have this 1% local option sales tax that have been around since, I don't know, looks like 2006 is the earliest one, or 1999. So it'd be nice to hear from some of these cities, maybe get some success stories. And I'm just trying to think of the rebuttal of like why this would be bad, and maybe get ahead of that and just say, maybe these cities can share those examples of, well, we haven't had people, not come and spend money. It's actually generated money, and really get ahead of that, like communications, marketing piece of sharing those stories. Because I think it could be a good opportunity for Montpelier. And I don't know if people would change their behaviors because we had a 1% sales tax. I just have a hard time believing that. I'd like to understand like the facts and hear those stories from these other cities.
Well, one thing that people traditionally say is, well, we'll lose business to Barrie or Berlin or Waterbury because people are going to drive to save the 1 point on their taxes, but which I never believed. But also, all those other towns have it now. Carrie.
Yeah, so I'm not in favor of a sales tax for different reasons. And I say this every time it comes up, so I'll just say it, that it's a regressive tax, and I'm very, very opposed to regressive taxes of any kind. That, if you buy a car and you make $12,000 a year, you pay the same sales tax on it as somebody who makes $500,000 a year and buys the same car. It's the same amount of money, and it's a much, much bigger impact on the person who has a lower income. So I don't like any taxes like that. I would prefer that they all are income sensitive in some way, and a sales tax just isn't by its nature. It just can't be. So that's my objection to it. So I just have to say that out of principle every time it comes up.
And while I understand that, I just want to say for the record, cars not included in the sales tax. They have their own special tax. They don't fall into that. There's a special taxes for cars.
Regressive tax.
It's still a regressive tax, but it's just to be clear, this wouldn't add a percent to car sales.
I think it will be great to talk with the business owners first, and the impact will be coming for them. Because last time we discussed, it was after COVID and they were really not ready. Now we had 2 floods, and I'm not sure how it will affect them. And also sometimes with our, I think, current time, not sometimes, most of the time, people go another state to buy things so they don't have to pay tax. So it is not that when we have it, suddenly people will be buying and we will be having revenue or online shopping. It's already killing downtown. And maybe with like lower price, it will also affect the decision of consumers. But again, it is okay to discuss this and just like hear from different perspectives. But it is very important, since I am the representative of City Council at Montpelier Live Executive Board, and all the stories I'm hearing attending the board meetings, downtown businesses are not anywhere we hope they would be. And I don't know what they will think about another tax, which will impact their daily function, right? Not only like buying, but keep their doors open. So yeah, let's discuss it, but we should be ready to hear different stories in addition to success stories. So thanks.
Tim, I agree with Taylor, and I do think we need to talk with the merchant community as well. And also remember that within this budget, within the parts that we seem to be okay with, that's probably going to be part of it, with the downtown assessment district going up, that's effectively going to be charged to the merchants. So we're raising that tax on them too. And remember that.
One point is that it would apply to online sales also.
Then drive
So that
to
helps.
New Hampshire. Thanks.
So the question really is, if we want to have this discussion with the business owners and with everybody else who is potentially affected, the way to do it is to vote tonight to put it on the proposed ballot to be the subject of the public hearings, the next two meetings.
And then you can vote to take it off the ballot. So
Yeah.
just because you're putting it on a draft, I just want to be clear procedurally. So you'd have it on as a proposal, you get public hearings, comment, and then the last night you finalize the ballot and you choose what is and isn't on, including the final budget number. So anything you vote tonight is preliminary for what you're taking to public hearings. And then you vote again in 2 weeks for what actually goes on the ballot.
Mm-hmm. So does somebody want to move to put it on for next week as a item on the ballot?
I will so move.
And is there a second? Any more discussion at this stage? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. That is off the table for this year. Okay. On to Tim's proposals. And we can just go down them and see if there is support for them. And Sarah, you're sharing your screen, so we're going down the list, and the first one on the list is council stipends. Tim, do you want to say anything more about that than you've already said? Does anyone else have any? I have my own ideas, but I want to let other people have a chance to address this first. Carrie.
So again, on principle, I think people should get paid for their work, at least somewhat. And so I do think it makes sense that we have stipends for council. At the same time, I feel like we all kind of need to look at what we're willing to sacrifice and cut. So I would be open to cutting that, reducing it, or eliminating it entirely. And I also want to say that when I first took this job, when I first, was elected to this position, I did a little math with a stipend, and remembering the days when I had to have childcare, and it really did kind of work out. Like if I'd had to hire somebody to take care of my kids for the council meetings anyway, not for all the time spent on council, but for council meetings, kind of worked out. And I thought, well, that's good. That makes sense. So to make this job accessible for people, the stipend is a key part of that too. So not crazy about getting rid of it, but open to talking about it.
Okay. Adrian.
Could we make it optional? Like I would waive my stipend, and if someone, could use that for accessibility or childcare, it could be an option to take that.
If we don't eliminate it, then anybody could do that now. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
I agree with Carrie, and I'm also okay if I don't be paid, but we should think about it as a general idea to attract like qualified people to run for a city council, because when there's no stipend, then suddenly it became a volunteer job. And also volunteering is different than like being officially on the seat. I'm not saying that people not do anything they are supposed to, but the idea will be different. But if it will help with our budget process, I'm okay not to be paid, because we are asking so many sacrifices from city staff and then not doing the same thing ourselves. It seems not fair, but we have to think about it as a general principle of serving public as a elected officials. Thank you.
I just want to say, I think on principle that this is a bad idea to eliminate this. That I think that, and year after year, Bill can attest to this. Year after year, before I was ever on the council, I would come to budget nights and council meeting and say, you guys should raise the salary that council members are getting, because there are people who are having to pay for childcare. There are people who might have to give up paid hourly work to be coming to city council meetings. And if we don't have the stipend, it really means that there are certain people who are excluded from the opportunity to serve. And I think that that's a bad thing. So I would seriously argue against it. Not to mention the fact that I think we all work very hard on this council and deserve to be paid for our work. But more than that, I think that as a principle for operating city government, I think we should not do this.
Our monthly meetings, I have never heard anyone is saying this. I think people really appreciate this public service and they're okay with it. Like over 2 years, yeah, I haven't heard anything. But again, if we all think that it's a good step for us to take, yeah, let's do it. Why not?
So, yeah, it's a funny thing. People, when I talk to people in general, people say, well, it must be a thankless job to be on the city council. And I've never found that. I found people actually go out of their way to thank me for doing it. And I assume that all of you hear that sometimes too. But still, I don't think we should support the proposal to eliminate the council stipends, but I'd like to see, is there majority support for that?
I'll just say we could remove it knowing that it's optional. So everyone has autonomy around making their own choice if they want to waive the stipend. I must have missed it in my handbook. So sorry about that.
I think the question is whether you put it in the budget to make it, people can make an individual choice whether to take it or not. We've had not many, maybe one or two council members over the years that have opted not to take it. But I think if we budget for it and make it available to everyone, and we have to at least keep included in the budget and raise the funds for it. Even if people choose not to take it, then it goes into the fund balance. And it would go unspent, or you could then reallocate it later in the year if you want to use it for something else. But so it's a question of whether you actually take it out of the budget. And you remember, this also is a separate line item on the ballot, that people actually vote this separately. It's in the budget, but because, I don't know exactly why. I think the history is just that make sure you're not just paying yourselves without the voters approving it. But so those payments for the mayor, the council members, and the school board members are approved by the voters each year.
And they always pass, of course. So are there votes to remove it from the ballot? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Well, I don't think we have.
Okay, we don't have a motion. Does someone want to make the motion to,
Take a straw.
yeah,
Just get a sense.
this is just a straw. Should the proposal to eliminate council stipends be built into the budget? Do you agree with Tim to take it out of, to not spend this money?
Since there's an option for people to be opt out, I think we should keep it as an item, budget item.
Okay.
And if you don't want to take it, we can just let you know.
All right.
I've thought otherwise at times, but I agree if there's an option.
Okay. Thanks.
Some people may really use it. that way.
Okay.
Take it off the list.
Yeah. Next up, sustainability and facility coordinator. Tim, do you have anything more you want to say about this?
You know, it's a role that was created more recently. You know, I think the work is good, like the work everyone does, but I think if we have to set priorities and say we're a town of roughly 8,000, what can we afford? What's our infrastructure? This is one. I don't think there are a lot of towns of 8,000 people that have this position. And that's my logic for saying this is one I think we need to step back on.
And Bill, this is a little less visible job. I wonder if you could talk about what this job really means to the city.
There's really two parts. They are connected, but one is dealing with all our energy improvements and working with the Energy Advisory Committee. And we have, our net zero plan, our sustainability plan that we've adopted, and is part of the job very specifically is to move that plan forward. And, part of that was the Berry Street building that they're working on. So always looking at those kind of things. And the other key part is basically our facilities. So just when something goes wrong at a facility, they're there checking it out, fixing it, or making arrangements for contractors to fix it and coordinating all this stuff. It certainly was big during the flood and all these, but so was every job, honestly. You can't really always use the flood as the measuring stick because everybody was essential there. But prior to that position, really anything that happened in a building was just handled by the people. So something went wrong in the fire department, the fire chief or their staff took care of the building. If something happened in the police station, the police chief handled the HVAC system or whatever, or the custodian if they could. It was DPW the same way. So it was really everyone to themselves, the senior center, all those kind of things. So there was no sort of central person managing facilities and looking out. So that's what they do. And that is a change. It did come about. The council, was looking for a way to implement the net zero plan and added it to the budget a few years back to do that, just with that specific goal in mind. And then we were able to take advantage of that to address our what had been a lagging facilities need.
What does anyone else think?
Have like a part-time job would be still good for the services, but also a little bit less, I don't want to say burden, but less spending on the budget. Just trying to find a middle.
I think the question is going to be whether we find someone to do it, that we would have be able to find an employee for a half-time position for that kind of work. I think we'd probably have to, we'd have to think about it. I think we'd have to probably think about whether we focused on one side of it or the other. You could have, is it primarily sustainability and can maybe help out with facilities every now and again or the other way around. But even so, I think, if we can do without it in its entirety, we could do with it half time. I just don't know if we'd be able to find a person.
it's always tricky to try to hire a half-time or a less than full-time for anything, because you're not getting the whole range of people that might be interested in doing that work or looking for a full-time job. So you're probably getting a different pool if you're advertising for a half-time job. But that's my experience where I work. But what do other people think? Should we keep the facilities coordinator or sustainability coordinator or not?
Of course, this is exactly the process I wanted to avoid and what I described last meeting, but let me flip the question and say, if we asked you to find $141,000, where would you find it? Given the direction that we've provided on core services, personnel, safety, that sort of thing.
I mean, I always hesitate to answer that on the spot without including our whole, no, I understand that our whole team, that's all. I understand. I'm going to answer it. I just try to say that we do tend to make these decisions together. I would say that this, as you saw, this was on our original list of potential reductions, and it's certainly one we'd look at.
So I guess I'll frame it. Also, I'm thinking about a little differently. So we got the money piece, but then if we lose this position, from what I'm hearing is we'll lose the facility piece of it, but we did do it in the past where each building managed their own facility. So what worked and what didn't work with that? And like, what was the problem you were trying to solve by hiring this position?
There were several. First of all, it was pulling people who aren't necessarily building specialists into that work. So police chiefs, fire chiefs, DPW directors, whoever were suddenly, and also being sort of taken up with doing, a major problem if the air conditioning goes out in their building in the middle of summer or the heat goes out in the winter, that becomes their top priority for the day, not running their department. And so that was a major one. There was no good coordination of longer term planning for building, plans for how we were fixing up buildings. There were people, there was not a person who could coordinate contracts with different things. I mean, they've handled all that work, putting in the showers and things at our Elks Club for the shelter, bid that project. I don't know exactly who would have done that. Maybe the rec director, I don't know, but just it would have been somebody like, here, this is going to fall to you. So, I mean, that's what it was. It didn't really work, and it depended on the availability of the people that were doing it, or it was really what were they giving up as well. So, but it can be done.
Question. And so I think this position, I went through I'm pretty sure I have this correct, but is also in charge as the contact person for district heat. So what would we lose if this position was gone in terms of district heat? Because I think one of the responsibilities was to grow the customer list. And so is that something that would, what would that look like?
I'm not sure that was specifically a responsibility of that.
Oh, okay, did I get
position.
that wrong? Oh.
But presumably district heat would be.
But absolutely district heat, having someone to be involved with district heat was certainly important. I mean, it would fall to DPW. That's really who handles it operationally. And basically this position has given them a buffer with someone to work with the customers and look at grant possibilities and all those kind of things, which have been doing, and it would fall back to and so.
So, Carrie.
Place where we have set priorities and we've put our values into action, and So a decision to cut this position, I think, needs to be a decision to shift focus away from that priority and to say it's no longer as important, not just purely as an opportunity to save money. So I'm not interested in saying that. I think this is important. And I think particularly when we're talking about our net zero goal, the whole, the way we have gotten into the mess that we're in now with climate change and with the environment is by saying, well, we can't afford it. We'd rather make money. We'd rather save money. And so it's especially short-sighted to say we're going to save money by pushing off our net zero goals. So I would rather not do that.
Carrie, or Palin, sorry. Let me look at different.
So I just want to put my reservation that I already emailed all of you. I don't feel comfortable doing this kind of discussion in a public session because it is very sensitive and we all work together. And I really appreciate everyone doing great job and hear us sitting here and discusses these things. I don't think it's really appropriate. That being said, again, we don't know the real impacts. So there is a list. Is there any way Bill and his team can discuss this and tell us, we discussed, we did everything, we look everything. We cannot afford not offering this position. Or we can do this, or we can just do whatever their solution is. But I don't feel comfortable doing this discussion in this way. So that's all I want to say.
The way I would answer that, Bill might have another answer to that. But the way I would answer that is that the city manager and all the department heads did that by going over the whole budget and included this position in the budget, in their proposed budget.
So there's a new proposed list. That's what I was saying. Can they, because we were told that that's a budget proposal and we can ask new things. It was just the first proposal generated after our general feedback. Now we are giving more specific, or there's a proposal for a more specific budget items that we wanted to be looked at. That's why I just mentioned.
Okay.
So last thing, because every single position is needed and everybody knows that, but because of the financial situation we are in, I think we are discussing if we can afford to keep them or we cannot afford to losing them. So.
Carrie.
Yeah, I just want to address the question about what we can afford. And what we're looking at here is a most likely tax rate increase of 1.1%, which is less of an increase than anything else that I spend money on in the rest of my life. And I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to ask. I think it's quite reasonable. So I don't think we're in a position of we can't afford this. I think we're in a position of discussing how we want to spend the money that we have and what our values are and what our priorities are. But we can afford it.
Yes, and before I hear from you, I see Peter Kelman, you have your hand up, and I think you're probably trying to talk about this specific item. And so if you are, I'd like to hear from you on that.
Yes. Although I agree with Pelin that when you're talking about a person here, a person who we all know, but I will say this would be an example of something that if Bill and his folks would think about it, could be, you could hire a property manager to handle the facilities part of it. I'm not, as a contract, that could be a contract to people who do that for a living. You don't have to have an employee and all of their benefits. And Jack, I'm not talking about screwing people. I'm talking about there are jobs here. There are things that need to be done that are in line with our values. But that doesn't mean you need to have an expensive full-time person. These things can be parsed out. They were parsed out before. Now, what we're not saying here is that the Montpelier Energy Advisory Committee had a whole net zero idea, which included energy audits. I was opposed to it because I thought it was going to be a bureaucratic nightmare and that nobody was going to do it anyway. And I think that, in fact, has happened. And no one's doing it anyway. But I may be wrong about that. But it's not a matter of saving money. It's a matter of thinking about whether this is the right way to do it, is having a person who does both sustainability stuff and basically facilities management. The facilities management part is a perfect example of something we could pay somebody to do who is not an employee. Thanks.
That's it. Steve.
I want to ground this in the context of when I was here for these discussions on creating this position, and a primary focus of this position was to get the district heat system running in the black. And I've talked to the consultants that we hire, and they weren't asked to come up with reworking the formula of the demand charges. So we have totally failed in this transition to a person to get the district heat. It was running at a deficit. It's still running at a deficit. And instead, we're focused on swapping out LED light bulbs. And that's just insane. This person risked his job, gave up his job as building inspector, but he got a $25,000 raise to jump into this position and not do the job of getting the district heat running in the black. So I agree with Palin that some of this stuff probably should be handled in executive session, but clearly we don't have a manager who's on our team to get this budget under control and reduce the taxes. We've got a manager who's defending a bloated team. So the work of managing contracts for repairs to buildings will fall to the city manager, and he can handle it. He handled it whenever a building, owner, a building manager like a police chief or a fire chief had something that was bigger, a big HVAC contract replacement, that falls to the city manager. That's what he's getting paid $231,000 to do. And that's what he should be doing.
Which is not what he's getting paid, but
that's what's budgeted for next year.
Going to say to maybe help the process a little bit would be, and I'm kind of thinking this as I'm going here, but I agree. It's tough to go down position by position for all the reasons we've talked about. But if you look at whatever number you want to get to, and we stick to the notion that we're going to not look at police, fire, public works, capital, we're really talking about parks, rec, seniors, finance and our admin staff in this. So, if your desire is to take funds, so I think, and if basically I would tell you that if you are, and they're here to defend themselves, if you were to take anything further really from rec or seniors or parks, we would certainly have to drastically think about what we offer in any of those programs. I think, we've talked about long-term consolidation, but really, they're doing a lot of that now. There's already, admin sharing, there's going to be work sharing. So, if you're looking for a number and you want, and you're saying these are the areas, this is the only area we want to sort of play in, and you want us to come back and give you some thoughts, we can do that. I think what I've been saying is just picking a number without any direction at all means, maybe I come back and cut the capital. And you're like, we didn't mean that, right? So it's like, if there's parameters, we'll take a look at it. And you know, I'm happy to answer questions, but you know, the honest answer is I'd want to talk with everybody and see, you know, what we as a group would be comfortable proposing, because I want to make sure we've thought through all the implications of all of it. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I get where Tim's coming from with his proposal, and I know that if we've already cut the admin assistant, if we cut the executive assistant, the communications coordinator, and the assessing assistant, you know, there's a whole lot of work that's not going to get done. So how do we deal with that? Like, how do we address that? Because we don't necessarily have people that are qualified to do that work, or you know, or they're just doing other things. So we need to think that all through about what the best mix of things are. So I offer that. It might be less painful than just pulling names out of a hat. Not that you were, but yeah.
Don't agree we should cut the communication coordinator position, but again, it's really up to Bill and his team to show us, right, the right direction, because they are doing this work day to day. But again, like, I hear so many things about the position, but personally, I know that it's very important. So, and it puts me as a city councilor in a very difficult decision. Personally, professionally, I don't know anything about municipal government. So, you know, really, I don't know what everybody wants to do, but discussing every single position here tonight, I think it will not take us anywhere. I think the staff and city manager should come together, work on it, and make a counter proposal for us. If you want me to make a motion about this, I can do this too.
Well, what you're open, floor is open to make any kind of motion you want. I'm not sure what the motion would be, but we've got a proposed budget in front of us.
So I make a motion that city manager and his team will work on the proposed list of cutting positions done by Councillor Heaney, and decide if those positions should be cut based on the services public will receive or not. I don't know. This is the best I could do. If you want me to change it, I can change it. I don't know how else to say it.
We'll ask for a number, right?
Is there a second? And is there a number? Like, is there a target that you're trying to get to, Palin?
Yeah, I think it's
That's
the, yeah,
Take up the city council.
yeah, 409,400.
So the motion is to reduce the proposed budget by $409,400 by making cuts to be determined by the city manager.
Recommended, please.
Yeah,
You determine them.
Mm-hmm. Or is it the motion is to have the city manager come back and recommend cuts totaling $409,400.
yeah, also we have a kind of a proposed list too, right? I don't know, it's getting so good.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that what you're saying? That,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can say yes or no, but I just want to do something, yeah.
Okay, it's moved and seconded.
If I may, and has more to do with the motion. I think if we were to take that motion literally, it's saying cut 409,000 and look at this list. So there's no other choice. It's that list, or I don't think that's what you meant. I mean, I think what might be helpful would be whatever number you want, 409,000, and to look within whatever areas that you want to say, but also give us, if we can think of something, I mean, if we could find a saving somewhere else that didn't affect services. I mean, I think we've already scrubbed that pretty hard, but we'd want to be able to look at the whole thing and come back and say, here's a package that is less bad. I mean, and to be clear, anything, like I said, anything we do, which I get, you set the financial parameters for the community, but everything we do will have an impact. I mean, we can't sit here and kid ourselves that things will operate the same way, but we'll try to figure that out and what we can say more intelligently than what I make up off the top of my head.
Tim.
But I think that's what we're asking you for is a way to quantify our services. And that's part of our problem with our strategic planning process right now is we take it down to like 60 or 70 something items and we don't prioritize them, which doesn't help any of us when we get to this place. But not everything we do has the same level of priority. And there has to be a way to say which items on our list are we doing that we'd like to do and they're good to do, but we really don't need to do. It'll have lesser impact if we don't do them than some other maybe more critical items. So I think it's kind of going with Kerry's thought is how do we gauge our services and what we're asking for with the priority versus just money.
Yep. I get that.
Is there any other discussion?
And just to that point, I think this is where we have this push and pull, and it's unintentional, but I can try to guess your priorities, but at the end of the day, you still have to decide if we got it right, is what I'm saying, and if, because you're the ones that set this. When it goes forward, it's your budget, not mine. I've given you my budget. Now you're adopting the city council's budget. So I want to work with you to get the outcome that you want, but the more clarity I can have as we go through this, the better product we can provide.
Were you raising your hand again?
No,
okay.
Where we at?
Where we are. Anyone else have anything to say about this before we move to a vote on this motion? And I'd like to go ahead, Sal.
I'm assuming you have some clarity based on the discussion that's occurred.
But whatever you want to put in the motion would be good.
Yeah, Carrie.
Yeah, I'm really uncomfortable with this. I think that the staff has already done what they're being asked to do. Tell us what's not important. Tell us what we don't really need to do. I think that's our job, is to say what we don't want to do. I don't think it's the job anymore. I mean, that they've been through that round. I'm not going to vote for this. I also think that we need to be clear that we're talking about a tax decrease if we reduce this amount of money. And I mean, everybody likes the idea of paying less money, but if we need to think about, is that responsible for providing the services that we need to provide? Is it more important that people's taxes go down, or is it more important that we provide the services that we need to provide? And I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying that this is what the question is now before us that you're bringing up.
Yeah. Do we know we have a tax decrease? Because the memo I saw from Libby's comment was my feet are in quicksand, and we really don't know what the outcome of this is. It did not say for sure you get this tax decrease coming.
We do not know. That's true. Sorry, we don't. It's certainly true. We don't know what's going to happen on the school side of it.
Yeah.
It's looking a lot better than it did this time last year. There's no question about that. There's much better reason to be optimistic. And I don't think we should be cutting taxes just for the sake of cutting taxes when we have important services that the people of the city rely on. And that's how I'm thinking about this. I've said it all along. We have important government functions that there are people who can afford to buy private gym memberships, but there are also lots of people who can't afford that and rely on the recreation department. There are people who go to depend on the rec department for childcare in the summer. There are people who rely very heavily on the services of the parks department. There are people who have found it to be very, very important, the quality of communications in Front Porch Forum and the Facebook page and the newsletters. And we regularly hear people coming into these meetings saying, we're not transparent enough. And if we cut our communication services, we're going to be less transparent. So those are the things we're dealing with. Are we committing the right amount of money to the municipal services that we're the only municipality that people who live in this city are going to get those services from? So do people have the motion clear enough in their minds so they know what they're voting for when they vote? And I'll ask the city clerk who's online if you're clear enough on what the motion is and to restate it before we vote on it.
Well, what I have is I don't know if you all can hear me. Yeah, it looks like I can. I just have the wording of the original motion. I guess there was a discussion around what people had in mind that it meant and it didn't. But what I have is the original language, which is move that the city manager and his team will work on a proposed list of cutting positions proposed by Councillor Haney and decide if these positions should be cut based on the services the public will receive or not for $409,400. Or towards, I guess I would alter that when I wrote it down, towards a goal of cutting, which is not the language, but I think it's probably clearer.
So you want your motion to say? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Carrie.
So just to clarify, wouldn't, if we made all those cuts, wouldn't it add up to about $400,000? So isn't this just making those cuts?
You said, I don't know, like really, if nobody wants to do that, we can just a roll call and just yes, no. If the motion drops, it's okay. I just want to move. That's it. That's why I said it. So
yes.
My objection to seeing to achieving a reduction in other ways. I think Tim's motion originally is based on your tiered structure in your budget memo. It started there and went a little beyond it. And if there are alternative ways to reach that number, I'd like to know what they are. They may not be acceptable to us, but I'd like to know what they are.
If I knew them right now, I'd tell you.
Second what Sal said, I think, this is not just this year's reduction in a tax. I'm not thinking about right now. I'm thinking about in the future and looking at our government structure. We've got to think about we have our values and our priorities, and I'll say it again, reiterate what Tim said, we need to update our strategic planning process to align or to include metrics and to align it to the budget, because it's impossible to make informed decisions as it's written. It's not tied to any budget, what our priorities are. So how do we know? Like, it's really difficult to make data informed decisions currently how the strategic plan is formed. And we went through it, we talked about it. You know, I think Palin and I offered some assistance with templates and different structures. So I will put myself out there and offer that for next time, so that when we come to this place, our decisions will just be so much easier because we've set the stage for our priorities and aligning them to the budget. But I would like to, look at our government in like 3-4 years and ensure that we can still continue to, provide the services that we provide, but afford what we're able to afford. This year we might not have a huge tax increase, but maybe next year we do. Let's prevent that now and look at our structure and look at our organizational chart. I would love for there to be opportunities to combine departments. I've looked at almost every single city in the state of Vermont, and there's combined departments. There's less directors. There's just the way the government organizations are structured are different than Montpelier. And I know we are not going to wave a magic wand and change that right now, but that's what I'd like to move towards, is just efficiencies in our government, looking at our organizational structure, having, less directors, which is a cost savings. The directors they work. Everyone here works, and then deciding, maybe there's just some things we can't do. And I think we have to be okay with that, but really deciding what is on our stop or pause doing list, because this is just not sustainable. And I'm very interested in looking at a $400,000 reduction, not just for taxes, but for the future of Montpelier and how we operate as a government.
Okay,
So can we introduce an amendment, or how?
you can make a motion to amend the motion if you want.
Yeah, I can drop the motion.
So I would just move to amend it to add alternatives to the sources of the budget reductions. So the reductions that Pelin, that they, her suggestion in the motion stays, but we add alternatives, other alternative ways to reduce the budget. That gives you many more options.
Okay, the motion to amend the underlying motion is to add the listed positions or alternative means to achieve the same level of savings. Is that right, Sal?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Sal, okay. All right. We'll vote first on the motion to amend Palin's motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
So that's 4-1. So the motion to amend passes. So now we're to the main motion. Any further discussion, or are we ready to vote on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So the motion passes 4-1. Okay. So I'm wondering what this does to procedurally to what we're putting on the agenda for next week.
That's a good question. I'd say that given that we're not going to get any further tonight, the public hearing warning is a tax dollar total tax dollars. So basically, you've given us a tax dollar total to put on. And I guess normally we do a presentation of the budget, what it contains. So I guess it would be, here's what we're suggesting based on your motion, and you'll have to continue talking about that. So I don't think we're going to have any more finality tonight.
Yeah, I think that's right, unfortunately. Carrie.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get clear on the procedure as well. So I mean, what we really have to do legally is come up with what's going to be on the ballot. And we need to have, are we required to have 2 public hearings about that? No, that's just what we want to do.
That's what we do.
Okay.
Can you, like as a city manager, come back and say that, oh, we just like can do like half of the reduce from that, or you are targeting for?
Well, I think you just gave me marching orders to do all of it.
Okay, that's.
I don't think I mean,
We can change it.
you can change it.
Yeah,
And we might, if you're amenable to that, I mean, we might be able to say, hey, this is the order or whatever.
Yeah.
This is the priority or whatever.
And it is not a new thing because you already provide us different alternatives.
Right.
When I say you, city staff already work on different alternatives, right? So,
Yeah, before we presented the budget, right, we
Yeah.
looked at all sorts of different things, right?
Okay.
And then we came down on where we thought made the most sense. So yes.
So one other thing that we should, I don't know if we need to address this tonight or if if that just has to be on the final budget, but in terms of putting the warning out, we need to split out the line item for the city clerk's office so that Carrie can recuse herself from consideration of that. And so I don't know if we're doing that tonight or if just do it on the 22nd. Okay.
I mean, I heard them say take all of that from the clerk's office. That's why she voted against.
No, to be very clear, she would have abstained.
I understand. Clerk's
I
office,
know
there's
you're
not much in the clerk's office to take, honestly.
No, I know you were jesting, but I think it's important to be clear on that. So I think that's where we are on the budget. We will expect next week and as early as possible, I'm sure, to come up with a budget that's $409,400 less than what was presented to us so far. And we'll keep working on it based on that. And we'll hear from members of the public based on that. Next item on the agenda is other business, potential executive session. Before we do that, because I don't anticipate taking any action coming out of it, I think we should do the reports. The city council reports, starting with Adrian. Carrie?
I just want to acknowledge what it's like to be an employee and to listen to these kinds of discussions. I've actually been in a situation like this myself and having to listen to a legislative body discuss whether I was going to have a job or not. And it's torture and it's horrible and it's a fairly inhumane way to do things. So I just want to acknowledge that and to thank the staff for their grace and putting up with this.
Thanks. So,
I second what Carrie so eloquently describes. It's kind of a brutal process, really. No better than the way corporate America does it. I've been through it many times where I got the call on Friday morning that I had an appointment at HR at 9 o'clock. but it's hard to say it's not a personal. It's not, but it always comes off that way.
Thanks, Tim.
I'll echo that too. This is not a process any of us like to do, but it's one we have to do, or at least the budget process. For my comments, one thing is I told a few friends and I announced that I won't be running for reelection in March. And Don and I have, pun intended, there's been a lot of water over the dam since I joined the council in March of 2023. And our home flooded and we've got it back, but we know it's just not sustainable for us in the long run to live there. So we're going to build a new house on Marvin Street and I'll be in a different district. So it doesn't make sense to run again, but thank you.
Thanks. It's been a lot of work and probably, I'm sure, more than you thought you were getting into when you ran for the job. So I appreciate your service.
Some new insights on city policies on building in Montpelier.
Which district you will be in?
Sorry?
Which district you will be in?
Marvin, that'd be your district. You and Sal can put up.
And Helen, do you have a council report?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to thank a fire chief helping with our residents. And I just want to propose if we can meet at the high school, maybe when they are available. So I know we are waiting for FEMA, but all the things I heard today, it's not dignified. So if people want to come and attend, they should. They can choose not to and come over Zoom. But if they want to come here, they shouldn't have experienced that. So if it is possible and we can just meet at the high school, I know that they have better arrangements. If they are not available, we can always meet here, but maybe we can put some kind of a note if people need help. We know it beforehand and we can just help them. So I think that's important. And also, I just want to announce I want to run for my second term, not my. So I will be on the election on March, and it has been both very nice and also difficult to be on the city council. But all the connections I have made so far with District 2 residents and my neighbors, and I've started like new initiatives, including youth committee. I just want to serve 2 more years if people elect me. So thank you.
Thanks. I do not have a mayor's report tonight. City clerk's report.
I just want to mention that petitions to run for office, I'll need them in the office by 5 o'clock, January 27th. And the deadline to file petitions for the ballot is 5 p.m. January 23rd. And that's different than the statewide one. I think I mentioned the statewide one had it on the website for a moment before I caught it. So apologies for that, but it's the 23rd, and that's as per our charter.
Thanks, John. City manager's report.
I don't really have an extensive report. Just wanted to note that starting January 1, there's a new state ethics law for municipalities. And we're going to have an agenda item on it in February once the budget's done, just so you're aware. You all as elected officials will have required training. It can be done online. And we have an ethics policy, but we have to make sure it complies with now the required state ethics policy. And there's some different procedures. You'll have to designate a liaison with the state ethics commission, et cetera. So it's a whole new thing, but ethics is always good. So anyway, just that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Item 10, other business. Is there a motion?
Yes, 2, in fact. I move to find that public knowledge regarding the council's review of the city manager's contract would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage because the council, as the employer, otherwise has no opportunity to review and evaluate the terms of the contract without risk of disclosing its negotiation strategy.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Sal?
I move that the council enter into executive session to continue discussion of the town's contract with the city manager following Vermont statute under the provisions of 1 VSA, section 31133A1A.
And would there be anyone other than members of the city council in this session?
Not immediately, although if we can meet and then invite Bill into the meeting, I'm fine with that.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we'll go into executive session. I assume that what's going to happen is we'll just be adjourning at the end of come out to adjourn. But so I don't think anyone else has to stay.